All right, hi everybody. It's me, Will, and I'm here with episode one of the Free Will podcast. And I have a friend of mine, Fraser. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, I have a friend of mine, Fraser. We're going to talk a little bit. He is from the UK. Where in the UK are you from, Fraser?
I'm from a city called Glasgow in Scotland.
Okay.
Uh,
And how's life in Glasgow, man? Like, how is it?
yeah, it's actually okay. I don't know what you'd have probably heard of Glasgow online. I don't know what it's like in terms of that. But yeah, for me. I've lived here my whole life and I love it.
Okay, so you've lived your whole life in just the one country.
Yeah.
All
I've had times where I've occasionally stayed like in England, stuff like that, but most of the time it's been here.
right. Okay, cool. That's cool. Now over there in Europe, you guys countries are a lot of them are kind of like the size of our states, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard you could fit like most of Europe in Texas. I think a lot of people don't know that. That's kind of why I wanted to grab you. It's because I think a lot of people in the U.S. don't really know a lot about Europe, how things are over there, stuff like that.
Mm.
Um, Hold on, I'm having an issue with my volume here. I don't know what the hell it keeps turning itself down for. Okay, so all right. Basically, let's just go. Now in Europe, you have universal healthcare in Scotland, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, say you hurt yourself, right? Something happens, you got to call an ambulance.
hmm
Um, how much does it cost for your ambulance trip to the hospital?
That's not a factor. So if I hurt myself, I phone you guys use 911. We use treble nine, so 999. We'll phone the emergency services. We'll ask, do you need police, like ambulance for the hospital, fire brigade, whatever it's going to be. And then you would say, oh, I need to go to the hospital. Here's my reasons why. Depending on your injury, they might stay in the phone. That's normal. But when the ambulance comes, um, it depends. Sometimes, depending on the severity of the issue, they might say, oh, that doesn't require an ambulance. But if it's a genuine emergency, life threatening, you will get an ambulance. And I've never once paid, or my parents haven't ever paid for me. Um, this has been the case since I think 1947 or 1948. I can't quite remember the exact year,
Okay.
but that's when the National Health Service started after World War II. So it's only a couple of years afterwards.
Okay, so the National Health Service is that's what
It
gave you
is,
guys universal health care.
yeah, that's it's basically as old as Israel is
Okay.
in
Yeah.
terms of modern.
I mean, I know you know a lot about the US, so you know that here we don't have universal health care at all. Um
Mm,
I mean, I was reading something recently about a mother who like EMTs like showed up because she had called an ambulance because I guess something was wrong with her son. I don't know what the details were. Um, but her son passed away, and they charged her, I think it was $1,000 just to say that he was dead on arrival. That's like the kind of stuff they do over here, and
mm,
it's terrible. We don't get free ambulance rides. Like a lot of people, I've been reading are actually taking Ubers to ambulance or not ambulances, Ubers to the hospital because it's cheaper,
mhm.
and just like fuck it, like I can just chill for this 15 minutes. Like I mean, you know, and that sucks because a lot of the time they need to there are life saving first aid things in an ambulance that kind of need to be administered. So it sucks that people are bypassing that because it costs so much money. I mean, you know, like in a lot of people will need to take like say a helicopter. Um,
Mhm.
Dude, those things are like it's like I think like $100,000 or something.
Oh,
Or
that's
like
a lot of money.
it's it's ridiculous. I'm actually gonna look it up on my phone real quick here. Um,
Yeah, it's so there is private healthcare in the UK.
okay,
It's optional. It's something that you pay for. However, and this might shock some people listening, you still need to pay national insurance. That's basically what everyone needs to pay to get the NHS. Um, so in order to get free healthcare, you need to pay, well, it's not even a case of needing to pay national insurance because we have illegal immigrants coming here and using the system. So
Okay.
they're not even paying national insurance, but they can receive it. So it's kind of like free at the point of use, and that seems to be for everybody. They never ask, "Oh, can we see your national insurance number?" Which is like your social security number, I'm assuming.
Okay.
Um, they don't really do that. It's just free at the point of use. Does it sometimes get abused in terms of like, people maybe fighting and not caring because they know they don't have to pay for it? That's not a worry of theirs.
Hmm.
So that's probably another. I mean, I've seen some silly comments from the US where you see people going, if healthcare is free, why don't you guys just hurt yourselves all the time? It's like, wait, so the only reason why you're not hurting yourself is that it will cost you? What? Like,
Dude, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't
like,
even know that. All right. So I just looked it up. The cost of medevac or medical evacuation, typical air ambulance flight within the US can range from $12,000 to $25,000, potentially reaching 65 to $225,000. Um, that's just to get to the hospital. Um, I mean, it's ridiculous. Ambulances are thousands of dollars. I've seen some bills where like someone like collapses a lung or has to go to the hospital and stay there for a few days. I mean, bills getting up into like the hundreds of thousands of dollars. In this country, man, they will bankrupt you.
mm,
They will bankrupt you if you get sick. And I'll tell you what, it makes me nervous. Because even if you have insurance, they still cover what they want. Like even if you
mhm,
have insurance, that's not an assurance that you are going to um, be covered for what happens. Like all
mhm,
the time, they want what's called oh my god, it's like a some kind of pre thing, a prior authorization. They
mhm,
you have to get a prior authorization. So I have ADHD, right? And
mhm.
I got prescribed um, a stimulant because it kind of helps you to focus. I had to fight with my insurance company for a month to get that medicine. Uh,
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at how funny that is, like of a system here. By the way, that's another thing. Um, we have a devolved government in Scotland, and what that means is that we have a separate government from Westminster, which is the UK government. So it's almost like hierarchical.
mhm.
So in England, that's a country. Scotland is also a country, but in 1707 we joined together in a union. So although we can
UK.
operate, yeah,
Okay.
so we can operate as one single entity, but fundamentally it's United Kingdom because there's two kingdoms. There's Scotland and England. You
Okay.
also have Wales. Technically, it's a principality. That's why you have the Prince of Wales. You've got Northern Ireland, which used to be the whole of Ireland until like World War I, when the IRA decided to take back Ireland. Well, we
So
were
there's
too busy.
four countries in the UK.
Yeah, four countries: Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and England. So that's your main four. But
Okay.
where it kind of goes a bit grey is you've got like the Falkland Islands down next to Argentina because lo and behold, we used to be an empire. So, but it's quite interesting because a lot of the countries that we had control over, we gave back a lot of their freedoms. So, for example, Canada, Australia, they didn't have to fight for freedom. We gave them it back. Um,
Yeah, I heard that. A lot of people say, we fought for freedom, and Canada just asked nicely.
yeah, yeah. In fact, it's quite misunderstood by Americans, and I don't mean to offend any of them.
Oh no, dude, don't worry about that. Like, just talk. I want to hear your opinion from the across the pond. You know what I mean?
So there's a couple of things, right? So you've heard of this no taxation without representation, and that was the main reason behind the revolution.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't quite that. There was also something else, and some Americans probably know because I'm from Scotland, so there's a chance that Americans know more about their own history than me. That makes sense.
Uh-huh.
However, a couple of years before this, there was an agreement made between the British government and the Native Americans that the colonies wouldn't go any further west. So the original 13 colonies of America, they couldn't go any further west. So what that means is there's less opportunities. There's there's also the case of, okay, Britain's taxing the colonies. If you
Mhm.
move west, there's more land, there's more places to build, more businesses, more money.
Uh-huh.
Had the US colonies been allowed to move west, imagine like while still being under British control, you actually had everywhere from New Jersey to California. If that was the case, and you were making so much amount, like basically what happened to Canada, once Canada was fully developed and wasn't just one part or one coast, although they were being taxed, because there was a greater area and more money flowing in, it mattered less. If you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Because they were so successful, that tax actually never went up. And it was true for a lot of these other countries. Same for Australia. Australia was actually it's kind of hard to talk about, but there was a lot of prisons that were full in Britain, and we had nowhere to put them. So we literally took people all the way to Australia and put prisoners in Australia. That's basically how they started.
That's how Australia was founded, right?
Yeah, so it's quite funny because we get on with Aussies a lot. They're really, really funny people. And what I like to do is, and what I like a lot of Americans, what will say, go and watch, type in like SAS and Delta Force or SAS Australia because they've got their own version of the SAS. They're our tier one operators in the army, and you should hear like the Americans getting on with the Brits and the Australians. Like it's probably one of the best. Like see when it comes to wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, even Vietnam War, the Korean Wars. We have literally been allies for decades, and when you hear our soldiers talk about each other, the pranks they pull on each other, it is so bloody funny. So it kind of gives you a little sort of idea of how close our soldiers can get. And although there's a lot of differences, for example, you guys have a constitution, we have like a monarchy, right? We
Uh-huh.
don't have a king of America, but I know Trump might want to be,
Yeah, he
right?
might as well be at this point.
But right, but we have a lot of differences, but we also have a lot of similarities, and it's always glossed over as like, and I get it. There's a lot of patriotism, like, oh yes, I'm American, oh yes, I'm Scottish, but fundamentally, genetically, and culturally, there's a lot of similarities between us. And so, when I seen Trump come in with like the tariffs and stuff, it really did surprise me because I'm like, okay, in my country, I see a lot of made in China too. I also see a lot of, like, for example, the last oil refinery in Scotland just got shut, like literally yesterday,
Really?
right? We're losing a lot of manufacturing industry, and we are seeing it going to Asia. So I actually understand where Trump's coming from, but how he's achieving to fix that is completely bonkers and backwards. That's the way I look at it. Yes, I think that there should be some sort of alliance between the allies, between America, Britain, um, even the EU. Although I'm actually one of the Brits that does support Brexit, you won't hear that very often. You won't hear people publicly say that
Okay,
because
okay.
controversial. But the EU, also, I remember at the time I heard people saying that they're also struggling with manufacturing because if somebody's doing it cheaper, you can't outcompete that. Like especially China's slave labor, you cannot compete with slave labor. If they're paying their workers nothing, then how are you going to make a cheaper product?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And it's funny, man. Uh how a lot of the MAGA and the new conservatives in our country like to go to extremes. With it's like if you say, "Oh, I'm not sure that closing factories in China and bringing them home to the U.S. is going to make stuff cheaper." I don't think that manufacturing a lot of things in the U.S. is a great idea. It's going to cost a lot of money. And if you say anything like adverse to bringing jobs back to the U.S., and don't get me wrong, I'd love to have jobs here. I just don't think it's feasible um,
Mm,
because of price. But they will say, "Oh, so you love slave labor?" And it's like, no, I don't love slave labor, but if you're the least bit, if you think maybe we don't need to bring all industry back here, then you love slave labor. It's crazy.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, it's
and
yeah,
this thing with this guy Garcia, that got sent to El Salvador. You watch American news, right? You know what's
yes, yeah,
okay. They sent him out by accident or whatever. And it's like, I think that he should probably, have gotten due process. Well, you love criminals, you love crime. And it's like, dude, that's the thing, man, is we are at a point right now where it's just like extreme one and extreme two. And I don't think people realize that the answer is always somewhere in the middle, man.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, it was really, really interesting. I was watching a video just last night, and it was regarding a cult video, which it's funny. I'm obsessed with watching cult stuff. It's just I get lost in it.
I
So
like
you
it too.
have
Yeah.
it's like Waco, Texas. You had like the Davidian Church. That was a big thing. Don't know if you've seen the Branch Davidian Church
Yeah, and they
in
went in
Texas.
there and killed these people, and I don't think they were even really bothering anybody.
So yeah, I think that there's probably some moral incentive to stop what they were doing because the leader was apparently like grooming the kids that were there, and the parents were so brainwashed they couldn't really protect their own kids. They were
Yes,
kind of
that's
giving
not
them up.
cool.
Yeah, it's not even that it's not cool. It's just that that's like put them in the wood chipper kind of stuff. If someone's basically making moves on your like daughter and she's like I know a child, like but was that the justification that the US used? No, and so it's like between the Drugs Enforcement Agency or what's the other one as well? There's like a federal one. I think it could be them actually, but um, there's so many different things like the FBI. It's like is it Ruby Ridge as well? They also fucked that up.
Yeah, Ruby Ridge.
Um,
Yeah.
and then you've got people like, and I think I went into this with someone else that I was talking to in your comment section. She was really, really lovely. But we were having a conversation about, World War II, the Nazis, how we view it differently to like America, how it all kind
Operation
of fits
Paperclip,
together.
and I saw you guys talking.
Yeah, well, Ted Kaczynski is known as the Unabomber in
Hmm.
America, University and Airline Bomber. That's what it stands for. And basically, when he was in university, it was really interesting. His mum and dad, they weren't snobs, right? They were just average Americans, from what I can understand. And then he went to Harvard, and then all he found was these snobby, upper class kind of people that he couldn't connect with. So he felt very isolated. Um, and when he was in university, there was some sick doctor that decided, oh, I've got this program that I would like to, have you as a guinea pig for, and it was actually MK Ultra.
Uh-huh. Yeah, crazy.
MK Ultra, by the way, is a CIA project to mind control people. It's
Yeah,
basically what
with
it's
like
about. Take
LSD, I think was part of it.
LSD, that was really big in the 60s and stuff like that. So
Real
this,
quick, um, just because this just popped into my head, my body is like a deadhead. Um, Long story short, he was driving along. Or I don't think he was driving. He was like a passenger in a vehicle. They got pulled over by the police. Like they were pulling people over outside of like these Grateful Dead shows. All the people are driving there. They have drugs. They're high, whatnot.
mm,
Well, anyway, he was on LSD. The cops asked him if he was on LSD, and he said yes, because he was really fucked up. So they took him somewhere. They put him in a dark room, right? And they
mm.
shined a bunch of like laser lights at him and like fucked with him for a little while, and they let him go. Like, what's that about, dude? Like, that is so weird, right? It just made me think of that.
Yeah.
And he
If
doesn't
that
to
was,
this day know what it's about, what it was about.
yeah, but in his defense, he was on LSD, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I think I would struggle to understand my reality if I was on LSD at that time. But my point being with Ted Kaczynski is like this guy went through MK Ultra, and although he actually admitted that it had nothing to do with what he did, I mean, when you also counter in something like Operation Northwoods, which I've mentioned a few times, and it's one of the least known out of them all, and basically the CIA walked up to JFK and was like, we're interested in this Operation Northwoods. Basically, it's a program that allows the CIA and any of your security agencies, essentially, to legally stage terror attacks in the United States
False
to
flag.
then false flag to then blame it on something else. So it was really interesting that you have the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski who'd went through MK Ultra, who was you could say programmed to do that, and you also had Operation Northwoods. So this guy was doing exactly what like basically the best candidate for Operation Northwoods because he's already been through MK Ultra. He's already like what do they call them? Like is it shadow agents as such? Like
Yeah, yeah,
he's
I think so.
a sleeper cell. So he's basically a sleeper cell. He's went through MK Ultra. You have Operation Northwoods. He's bombing things. That's interesting. Somebody that went through MK Ultra then went on to become a bomber. It's strange. It's from the same group of people that talked about Operation Northwoods that came up with MK Ultra. He went through MK Ultra, started bombing things. You could call it a coincidence, but there's only so many coincidences you see throughout history. There's also this weird thing. Not that I know a lot about it, I can't confirm it, but the guy that killed John Lennon from the Beatles,
Yeah, Michael
apparently,
Chapman.
he had a history with LSD and stuff. So it's like that's strange. I mean, that could be a coincidence for all I know. But if you can convince people to just go up and kill people because God told you to do it, and they sound crazy, and then they get thrown in like whatever an asylum because they're crazy, when actually they've been programmed to do that, that's scary. Because I don't know if you've heard about this, like Virginia Giuffre. Apparently, she's killed herself.
Yes, yes, she killed herself. But she had put out a tweet a couple years ago that said, don't ever believe that I killed myself. If I die,
Yeah,
something I forget what the tweet said. But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. The way I look at it is, if you've got this program that you've been running since the '60s, like MK Ultra,
Uh-huh.
you've pretty much perfected it in the last 60 years or so. You've probably got a lot of information on it, and never ever believe your intelligence agencies when they've said, "Oh, we've actually stopped doing that." No, you've not. No, you bloody have not. Right? Because the Russians, they used to say things like, when the Soviet Union was running, "Oh, we used to do this." For example, they I can't remember the exact name of the system they used. I'll see if I can find the name of it. But it was
The Russians, you said?
what's that?
You said the Russians?
Yeah, they had their own version of you know mind control as
Of
well.
course they
They had
do.
their own. So if you take the CIA and mirror it and imagine a KGB version of it, like a Russian version, everything that everything your enemies are doing, these horrible dictators, the US is also doing. And it's not doing it publicly, it's doing it behind closed doors. Um, is it I don't want to say the wrong name here, but there was a real known prison. Is it Guatemala? Am I getting that wrong?
What was it now?
Guatemala? Am I getting that wrong? It's the prison, basically.
Oh, the place where they're sending Americans?
No, this isn't Trump. This has been since before him. There was a place where they
Oh,
used to send
Guantanamo.
Guantanamo Bay. Yeah,
Guantanamo
that's
Bay,
it.
yeah. Cuba, I think.
I was saying Guatemala there.
Yeah, yeah.
I always get words mixed up. But yeah, Guantanamo Bay, they were torturing people. The United States,
Yeah,
not
rendition
officially, but
enhanced to interrogation.
it's like I don't think there was ever an executive order or a motion pushed by, you know, um, Congress to do that. I don't think that ever happened. And I think that there's things that happen out with the executive branch and Congress in America, 100%.
Yeah, and they do it in other countries because technically it's not against the law there. But ultimately,
Yeah.
like, isn't stuff like that against the Geneva Convention anyway?
Well, the way I look at it and the way that the CIA will look at it is that human rights is a subjective piece of paper written by someone years after humans were even born. It's like the same with the Ten Commandments of God, right? They only apply if you follow them. You
Mm.
know what I mean? The only laws that the CIA go by are the laws of physics. As long as it's keeping to that, there's not a line that they won't cross. They'll take the gloves off, and they'll do what they need to do. They'll torture people. They'll they'll even mind control their own people. They'll present to the president, "Oh, look, here's Operation Northwoods, where we're going to do terror attacks in our own country." And for the past, say, well, yeah, 24 years since 9/11, there's been so many conspiracy theories about it being a,
Oh my God.
uh, you know,
Yeah. Do you think do
inside
you think
job.
9/11 was a conspiracy or do you think it was legit?
Um, well, I've spoke to a lot of conspiracy theorists, and by the way, there's something I need to dispute with that as well. When JFK was assassinated, the government were always really big on labeling anyone who had any skepticism as a conspiracy theorist. Even though years at least, like one thing I have to commend Trump for is when he released the JFK files, it turns out that there was like some sighting of Lee Harvey Oswald down in Mexico,
Uh-huh.
and they released what the CIA operatives were saying at the time. They said we don't think that's him. So there might have been a possibility that there was some sort of, you know, what do you call it, inside job
Yeah.
because Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't in Mexico according to the CIA, but they said that and they used that as justification to pin it on the Soviets.
Yeah.
So
I actually I traveled to Dallas. I went to go see a Cowboys game, and while I was out there, me and my dad went to Dealey Plaza, which is where JFK was shot. And it's all right there for you. You can see the book depository, the window. There's two X's in the street for like each bullet that hit him.
Yeah.
And then they basically they come straight down this road, and then when they turned, that was when he got shot, right?
Mm.
So basically, they're going straight down this road, and the window where Oswald supposedly was, the book depository, it
Yeah.
looks straight down this road, right? I was looking at it and I said to my dad, if Oswald was really up here, he could have just shot straight. He would have had the best shot from the book depository, by shooting it before it turned and went by the grassy knoll.
Yeah.
Um, and and then it's like when you see like where he was, it looks a lot more like he could have been caught in some kind of crossfire. Like maybe they were shooting from two different directions or something like that. I mean, I don't know. Oswald could have very well have been a fall guy. I mean, JFK he was against big business, he wanted to get those guys straightened out. And they own the country, dude.
Yeah. With the Lee Harvey Oswald case, like I know that, and I'm probably going to get a lot of crap for this in the comments of your video, but it's either the clip of the magazine. It was a bolt action rifle that he was using. It was a Carcano. I know that. I just know it's like I think it's Italian. Um, but it's a bolt action rifle. So see, every time he's had to like pull the trigger again, he's having to pull a bolt back, get rid of the cartridge, put
Yeah,
a new bullet in,
look at it.
right? And the succession of the shots, how quick they were. I always thought that's like this guy must have had like sleight of hands, right? He must have been like grown a third hand out his chest to reload that thing so quick
Uh-huh.
because it's a high pressure situation. And apparently, according to his records, he was always a crap shot. He wasn't really good at hitting targets.
Yeah.
So the fact that this guy's able to, in a high pressure situation, shoot, pull the bolt up, back, new, release the cartridge, put a new one in, whatever. I mean, I don't entirely know. There could actually be a magazine attached to this rifle, and that might have made it easier to load. Um, but just by the frequency of shots, the fact it's a bolt action to me suggests that this guy must have been like hitting bullseye every single time,
Yeah.
and
And
that's
it
so
takes
hard to do.
time. It takes time to take
Mm.
to have you ever shot a bolt action gun? Have you ever actually had one?
I have shot. It was an Italian shotgun. It was a vertical double barrel, and it was down in England. You can also do it in Scotland as well, but gun ownership here is totally different, man. Um, we banned handguns in the 90s, so we have no pistols. And that was because of a school shooting that happened in Scotland and the
Oh
whole
wow, so a
UK.
school shooting happened and you banned guns.
Yeah, yeah.
Have
Basically,
any
the
more
first
school
time,
shootings happened since then?
no. But to answer, it's a bit more. It's interesting because there is an argument that pro-gun people have that makes sense. All because law-abiding citizens won't buy guns or can't buy guns doesn't mean that the non-law-abiding citizens will. So you do see criminals in the UK. I think his name is Chris Cabba recently. I'll see if I can double check that name. But there was a guy, yeah, shooting of Chris Cabba, and he was in London, I believe, and he had a gun and he shot someone at a nightclub in London and was continuously shooting this guy down the road. So the guy's like trying to duck for cover and he was basically shooting him. Later on, the police see him and they think he's going to pull his gun, so they shoot and they kill him. And then there's a big outcry of was this misconduct? Was there any racism involved? But in my opinion, man, I take every case as it comes. I don't just think, oh, cops killed a black guy, especially not in the UK, because it very rarely happens. It's not as if, in America, I have to say, I can tell you Rodney King, and that rings a bell because of the LA riots. I could say George Floyd, even though you could probably be a bit skeptical about that case because apparently there was drug usage and other things, other factors we didn't know at the time because people seen a small clip. You see this all the time on the internet. Small clip goes viral, everyone's angry. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Twitter, that's basically all Twitter is. It's just people getting angry over fucking nothing, right?
Yes.
So, and I'm not saying that it was nothing. What I'm saying is that, is it Derek Chauvin? That's his name, I think, the cop that
Yes, the
apparently
cop
was
that killed was allegedly whatever. Yeah.
yeah, well, let's put this way, right. What he did by putting his knee on that part of his body was actually taught to him by the state.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he should suffer the consequences for something he was trained to do by the state. I think the state should be punished, if anything, if it's considered that way.
It was excessive and his other officers were telling him maybe to chill.
Yeah, yeah, but the same thing is that how do you put it? If you're taught that by the state and that's in
Yeah.
your training and you do your job to the letter and he's doing his job, yes, other cops might perceive that as you're being a bit too much. But if you're following it by the book and he's literally doing his job, now I'm not here to sit here about the morals about it. I'm not
Hmm.
going to say it's right. There's problems in America. Nobody's really got the solution.
Yeah.
Um, but in my opinion, I don't think it should have been him that was being punished because what's going to happen is he's going to become the scapegoat for George
Which he did.
Floyd's
Yeah.
death.
Yeah.
There's going to be another George Floyd in the future because that's still in the training manual that hasn't been scrubbed off, right? So the same thing that killed George Floyd is still in the system. So, you know, putting Derek Chauvin on a crucifix isn't going to solve that problem.
Of course not.
So, but
The fall guy.
this is where like when it came to BLM, when it came to like the Republicans' reaction to BLM, the way that they burned down a police station, it's like
Crazy.
it's not it's not necessarily the police building. The police building didn't sit in George Floyd's neck, right? The actual police building itself didn't do that. And the cops that were just patrolling to make sure that you and whoever other Americans that come across are safe, they are not the guys to blame. There's probably some really decent cops out there. You know, I've seen some of them on YouTube. I've seen some of them pull this guy over going, I should really give you a ticket, but I'm not going to because you clearly would struggle to pay the ticket and I don't want you to go through that. So you get these genuine cops in America, but you also get these ones that the ones that bait up Rodney King and other ones that are genuinely horrible.
It's terrible.
Um,
And the negativity definitely overshadows it. So, real quick though, as far as good cops and bad cops, like if I'm a cop, if I'm a good cop, right, and I
yeah,
know that there are bad cops in my department,
yeah.
and I don't say or do anything, doesn't that make me a bad cop too? Because I'm kind of, you know, can you afford to really be neutral on a moving train? Like, shouldn't,
Well, um, so there's what you call Boolean answers, which is true or false, and there's a reason why they call it lying by omission.
yeah,
You might have said a half truth, or you might have not said the full thing, but is it the full truth? Technically, what they were saying was true. However, they never told you all of it, so therefore they're lying by omission. That's what society says. If somebody doesn't tell you the full story, they're lying by omission. So
yeah,
they're liars. So by that logic and argument, yeah, the person that doesn't pull up and say something. However, it's really interesting you mentioned that because where I live in Glasgow, we have something called grass culture. Now, a grass means somebody that snitches, and if you snitch in my city, you're not going to last very long.
oh, really? It's a bad thing to snitch out there?
It's really bad to do. And say, for example, like, I mean, I think it's pretty sure that that's quite bad in most places, right? Snitching.
Yeah.
When COVID happened, our government at the time was very, very harsh about it. My daughter's birthday was around about the time during COVID. It was only like one at the time,
Hmm.
and we had like these little like don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of like a nightlight that shines on the ceiling
Yes.
and has like little pictures. So we put one of them up because it's her birthday, and we were just chilling. It was just like literally family, and the police came, seven of them.
Seven.
Um, they were trying to, well, they were accusing us of all having a big party, like we're having a rave, even though it was one nightlight.
Yeah.
The neighbor had phoned the police on us for having a nightlight, right? And they had seven police out. They
That's
were
definitely some
accused,
snitch shit.
yeah, they were accusing us of, oh, do I smell weed? So they're basically coming up with these things. There's no weed in this house. There was no weed at all. But they were coming up with these things to try and initiate some sort of crime or identify something to pin it on you. That's what it's like. So my experience with cops in my country hasn't been good. But that's not to say that there hasn't been good cops in that time. At my high school, we used to have this like community cop where she would be around our school if there was any violence or anything, she'd be on it. So she was really nice, and her name was Stephanie Parks, lovely woman. Um, but there was other cops. Like when I was young, we had a neighbour. Again, so one of the things that I hate. We don't have HOAs in the UK. We don't have that. That's one thing I hate about America from what I've seen online. But here we can sometimes get moved in with. It's called gentrification, where they'll move these people next to you, like the local councils, because you
Uh-huh.
get council houses. You don't know. Do you guys get government housing?
Yeah, some people have it. Yeah, yeah. And you know what's funny, dude? At one point when I was living in Colorado, I wasn't doing great, and I actually I tried to get government housing,
Yeah,
and they were like, you've got to be careful if you smoke weed. And I was like, why? And they were like, we drug test the walls. And I was like, what? So because it's federal, because Colorado is, whatever, they don't care if you have weed. But because
yeah.
it was like a federal program, they drug test the walls of the house to see if you're smoking weed in there. And if you fail, you get kicked out. I didn't end up going to the place. But like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, you're just going to have a big tube from your window all the way to where you're smoking and just blow in the pipe. Just
Yeah.
put a gas mask on with a joint.
Um, what's the law on weed in Scotland or the UK?
Uh, you can get medical cannabis, but it's much like a lot of the world where it's illegal for the most part. Um, you can have personal use, and then there's intent to supply. Um, so yeah, and just personal use can be you're walking down the street and you've got, it's like up to 3.5 grams of weed.
It's like an eight.
Um, But one of the things that really bogs Americans' minds, and by the way, I've got Americans that live in Scotland, right? Some nice Americans that moved here. I've had Americans that literally shit themselves thinking, oh my God, I need to pay for this ambulance. I need to pay for this healthcare. No, 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 just sit down, darling. You're fine.
Yeah.
I had this woman that moved here. She's got a nice, basically, long story cut short, there's this guy I know. He moved to America. People were treating him like shit. It was in the South somewhere. I think it was Kansas. Could be wrong. But when
Hang
he
on
went
one
there,
second, brother. Record. All right, there we go. So, I don't remember exactly where we were, but I wanted to ask you, for everybody that's watching it cut off at an hour, so I had to restart. I wanted to ask you, like, what is your opinion, from across the pond? Like, you're not, like, we're getting hit with CNN and Fox News and all this crazy propaganda. A lot of people don't realize our news here is propaganda, but at this point, I'd say it's all legitimately propaganda. Um, what do you think of America? Because I think you probably get more accurate information about our country than we do. We're in the echo chamber here.
I mean,
What do you think of
the way
the current situation with Trump? Like, what does it look like to you is happening here?
it's frustrating. Do you know how America sort of prides itself on being a melting pot? It it's annoying because there's things that are said on each side of the political aisle that I can agree with, but there's also things that they both say that makes me detest them both. And I think what's interesting is that very soon I think there's a third party in UK that's possibly going to take the majority
Wow.
because the people here are pretty much sick of both the left and right main parties. And they are really scared. There's even these leftist sort of like what I would describe as our version of the Democrats are called the Labour Party. Um, Basically, they were originally started in Scotland, of all places, to protect workers' rights. You
Yeah.
know, after World War One, soldiers came back from the war and they couldn't find jobs. So the people that were working here said, "Hey, can we actually work less hours so that there's more time for other people to work
Wow.
around the clock?"
Yeah.
So they were demanding 95, not because it was more sociable for them, but so that other people could also get some work done as well. So instead of having one person be paid, it was paying two people. So then, from the employer's perspective, you're still paying the same, right? You're still paying someone,
Yeah.
but it's just that that one person isn't working as long. So it's now that one space now occupies a place for two people. And what happened was is that the Westminster government got really scared and sent up a bunch of tanks to quash the protests because we had peaceful protests in George Square, which is in Glasgow, and Westminster sent up tanks to basically crush anyone that demanded 95. Now, when you think about communists and socialists, right, you don't think about people demanding 95, right? You don't think about that 95 working hours. People in Scotland, a lot of people don't understand this. They think, oh, British Empire, you guys were, living it up, living life. Glasgow was a slum in the 1800s.
Uh-huh.
We had shipyards, no health and safety regulations, nothing. People fell off cranes and died. People were, molten metal was falling on them, and that was just life. Go home, you get fired. That's it. So the British Empire might have been this grandeur. luxurious thing in a lot of Americans' eyes, like, oh, they were really rich. The people that live here didn't always agree with what the empire did, and actually they barely benefited. It was the aristocracy that benefited. It was the lords of the land, the barons and stuff like that. We're
Uh-huh.
not talking about your general British, person. But when you're asking me questions about what I think about America, um, I am really divided when it comes to your um political situation because there's things that I really agree. Actually, ironically, before Trump got into the Republican Party, there was nothing much I agreed with on the
Uh-huh.
Republican side. I'm being honest. It's it's a Republican trait to do tariffs, for example, right?
Uh-huh.
And tariffs is like saying, "Oh, I'm not getting what I want from this person, so what I'm going to do is see what I require from that other person. I'm actually going to just stop taking it and hope it doesn't harm me." Oh, that person's got all the trees for the oxygen. Yeah, I'm just going to put up a wall to stop that from coming through. You're punishing. You're suffocating yourself, right? And for as much as I want China to take responsibility and not do slavery, because uh, Britain, before America, Scotland was the first one to stop slavery. We had Joseph Knight, a black man, who went to court and said, never mind UK law, under Scottish local law, before the Act of the Union, you couldn't own slaves. And based on that argument, he became free and everyone in Scotland became free.
So slavery was prevalent in Europe too. I don't think I even knew
Uh,
that.
yes, yes, it's big time, but it's more confusing than you think because there was people in Africa that were really rich because they were selling other Africans. So Africans themselves were selling
Only
other
themselves,
Africans.
yeah.
So, but you had things like, I mean, you had the British Empire, you had Spain with their acquisitions. They, you go to the Philippines today, they they can speak Spanish.
Hmm.
They have Catholicism that they got from the Spanish. They're really big in Catholicism. That's what they got from them. I know there's a huge relationship between America and the Philippines. I know that a lot of Filipinos love America, right? This is
Yeah.
just an example. But when you go there, there's a lot of their culture that's been taken from, like, say, that came from Spain. You've got Mexico, they speak Spanish. America speaks English. There's countries in Africa that can speak French,
Uh-huh.
right? So we went in and we colonized, but not just that. There was already African kings, queens, blah blah blah, that were making money from the slave trade too. It
Okay.
wasn't like it was. It sucks for the people that became slaves, but it wasn't all, African. All African people were victims of it. No, there were people that
Hmm.
profited from it. Um, so that is interesting. But yeah, we had slaves in the UK, and so did other people in Europe. I can try and find the countries for you, but it doesn't really matter too much because we can kind of view Europe as one. A lot of Americans do that anyway. Europe as if it's one country.
Yeah,
But
yeah, right.
it's really funny because if you said that to, say, your grandfather or whoever in your family might have fought in World War II, they'd have looked at it and went, Europe? Because when you think about World War II, to say Europe was a bit ridiculous when you consider that Nazi Germany was very different from Switzerland,
Yes.
Switzerland different from Britain. They were on different positions. So yeah, we are smaller per se. Well, the actual landmass of Europe is about as big as the US, or maybe a wee bit bigger. But when we talk about the EU and Europe, they're very different. One's a union, one's a continent, and that union I don't think represents a lot of the European people. I
Now,
don't think.
all European countries aren't in the EU, right? It has certain
No,
members.
yeah, it's got certain members.
Okay.
Um, it's basically evolved. It's really ironic. After World War II, the US and the rest of the world are shit scared of Nazi Germany 3.0. So they kind of tried to make all the European countries join in a European economic market, and that market then became the EU after years. And the really disgusting thing about the EU, in my opinion, a lot of people can talk about the good things. So what's the good things about the EU? Well, if I'm in France and I want to go to Germany, I don't need to show my passport.
Okay.
If I want to go to Italy, I don't need to show my passport if I'm going by land. I can literally drive the whole way there from France to Italy. I don't need a passport.
That's cool. So
So
so the EU, so there's no like border checkpoint when you're going from
no,
EU state, EU country to EU country. You just
no,
through.
you can
It's
go
like
from
our
Spain. Yeah, it's like your states in that regard. I can go from Spain. I can go to France for a day, not needing to take my passport. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I go into a restaurant una mesa para cuatro por favor. Then next minute go au revoir. You know, to France. I could go anywhere in Europe for the EU, and there's no restrictions on where I can go. What's the negative of that? You might think, that sounds fantastic. I can just go to any European country. That sounds brilliant. It is for businesses, and it is for a lot of us that like to explore job opportunities in different
Yeah.
countries. But when, let's say, somebody like Germany says, "Oh, we're going to live in a bunch of refugees, which we can't identify if they are or not because they don't have their passports, don't have their birth certificates. We don't know their criminal record, we don't know anything about them, but we're going to let them in." It means that you have basically opened the floodgates, and every EU country now
Mhm.
has them because there is no passport checks. There is nothing.
Okay.
So when Germany, a standalone country, makes a decision, it can fuck up the entire of the EU's immigration policy.
Okay.
So
So if they
that's the
let
problem.
people in, if say they get lax on immigration, they let people in, then those people,
Yeah,
it's easy for them to just spread throughout the EU.
yeah, and you know what? Some people might think that sounds a bit bigoted, especially people that are more Democrat minded, for example, that think about the border in the US with people coming through the border. My problem is that in places like Britain, we've got other things to think about. For example, we have a health service. We have a certain amount of hospitals, and in these hospitals, there's a certain amount of beds. So if I don't know who's or how many people are coming into my country, how can I guarantee we have enough hospitals, enough beds? How can I guarantee that that
Because
service isn't
you're
going to get
not ready for
impacted?
that.
Well, exactly. We need time to prepare for these people coming. And if they're coming in numbers and we don't know, what if there's a big crisis and we need all the there's like well there's according to the sorry, not the polls, but according to the data, there's 68 million people in Britain, 68 million, and that's not 628, that's 68. But that's just numbers that we've got on sheet. There's been 10,000 illegal immigration boats coming from France. 10,000, and each boat there's multiple people.
Wow.
So there's potentially hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people that have came. And if our hospitals, prisons, police force, other things aren't built up to take that on, then they're going to get overwhelmed. And it doesn't mean that they're going to overwhelm us and try and invade. I'm not crazy. Most of them are just trying to better their lives. It's really funny though when
Yeah.
they come over from France and they say, "Oh, we're trying to get a better life because we're
In
in
France.
a war torn country." Yeah. So what happens is they go to this place called Calais in France, and they say, "We need to go to Britain because we're not in a safe place." You're in fucking France, dude.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think France is that dangerous, right?
No, it's not. But they say that, oh, we're from a war-torn country, so we should be able to come to the UK. But if you've had to go through Germany, Belgium, and France to get there, like you've went through three safe countries and you still want to come to the UK, it's
Hmm.
just a bit fucked, right? But there's a guy that actually, a Hamas member, that managed to get in that boat and is in Britain and got arrested, thankfully, because he live streamed it like a twat.
Yeah.
But we have no idea who's coming into this country. A couple of years ago, I think it was in 2018, we had this what was called the Skripal poisoning, which two Russian agents came here and poisoned people on our soil.
Novichok, right?
Yeah, Novichok. That's exactly it.
I remember.
So, and that was a big, oh, these guys came over in planes. We knew they were coming. We knew who they were when they left, right? Can you imagine they came through these boats? We can't tell who's coming in and out. We could have hundreds of Russian agents possibly. We have no clue because we're not. We used to be the fucking British Empire, best navy in the world. Now we can't stop a couple of little fucking dinghies crossing the channel. It's insane.
Yeah.
And I don't mind it. See if you came from Syria, right, and your whole family's getting slaughtered by, you know, and you know, either way with Syria, it's a touchy subject. The people that were getting tortured under Assad, I think that I mean they came into my country, we accepted them. That we accepted that as a refugee.
Yeah.
Scotland generally does. If you're coming from that country directly to us, we'll accept you because you're literally from that country and you've literally came from there straight to here. You've signed the paperwork. You're good to go.
Yeah.
We can then allocate more beds, more housing, that kind of thing. But when illegal immigrants come, there's always a housing shortage because you can't predict how many there's going to be, stuff like that. So we've got a housing shortage in Glasgow right now,
Do you have
and
like do you have a system like ICE there that goes around
uh,
expels people?
so there is that immigration enforcement sort of thing. However, at the before this became such a big issue, there was already problems. I don't think they're really well funded. If I'm being entirely honest, I think that the current establishment that's in power, not just the left wing one, but the Conservatives here, I have to just say the Conservatives are basically, in my opinion, the Conservatives in Britain are basically more like Democrats. You know, they are trying to look like a lot. It's a good joke in Scotland. You know, we call Conservatives Tories. That's because that was their old name in like the 1800s or whatever.
Tories, T
But
O R R I E S, right?
Tories with a Y, so Tory is a Tory.
Okay.
So Margaret Thatcher, for example, is a Tory. Margaret Thatcher, when she died, a lot of Scottish places and pubs started celebrating. We are not a very conservative group, but the problem is that the reason why we don't like conservatives in Britain isn't because of their conservative ideas. You'd think that would be the case. No, no, no. Margaret Thatcher said she was for the free market, but then intervened multiple times. So you cannot say that you're pro free market and then, as a government prime
And then
minister, come
interfere.
in and start interfering. Like to us, that was like, no, that's bullshit, you know. And in some cases where people were asking for nationalisation of stuff, like shipbuilding in Glasgow was such a big deal. It was a
Yeah.
big part of our DNA, and it didn't modernise. The private owners didn't modernise it. You know, they put profit above modernising it, which actually would have made it last. But the only people that did modernise was BAE Systems, which is our sort of defence. You guys have Boeing, and you have all these other defence contractors that build your ship. We've got our own as well. We've got BAE Systems. They build our ships. They build
We even have
other things.
SpaceX. Elon makes a ton of fucking money.
Yeah,
The government's
that also surprised me as well. Like for years, and I mean since 2015, 2016, I've really been embedded into the American politics because I think it's fucking interesting.
Mhm.
But in 2015, 2016, you had a bunch of conservatives in America saying, "Oh, George Soros, he's putting his billions in. He's affecting the population and what's popular, and oh, we can't trust billionaires." And it's like, come on, man. As soon as Trump's in, yeah, let's just slap in a couple of billionaires. Oh, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, are you all going to be there at the inauguration? That's right. That's right. Afterwards, you can show off your orange lips after you've kissed Trump's arse. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a joke. And by the way, there is some things that I agree with Trump. That's what I was saying earlier on about
Like
what my
what?
opinion is. Well, I do think we're seeing this in Europe, right? So it's not like it's just an American thing with illegal immigration. But see, in America, you guys have, I would say, a bit of an issue with resource management.
Yes.
So things like in California, California used to have a river through it, and now it doesn't. I watched that on, I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast, and then I looked into it. But basically, it's dried up to fucking. It was all to do with these people basically interfering with it that caused it to dry up. But it's still
Uh-huh.
present in Canada and stuff like that. But you just have like a resource problem where like you need HOAs. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but American houses are way bigger, like 4 times bigger than our houses.
Really?
Yeah, you just have a lot more. Like you have lawns, you have porches, whereas we're I think I watched this Know Your Ally
You don't have
video.
porches there, dude?
I don't think I've seen a porch in my life here.
Really?
I don't think I've seen a porch. I had to go abroad to see that.
Huh.
Um, you know, the American white picket fence and then the houses and the lawn. I mean, you guys have sidewalks, right? We don't call them sidewalks for a reason because you have your sidewalk, then a piece of grass, then the road, right?
Hmm.
Whereas we don't have sidewalks, we have pavements. So there's a road, then there's a curb, and the idea behind this, I mean, you guys are only 250 years old, right? And that's not a disrespect, right? I actually think it's really cool to be so young but so powerful. I think that's cool,
People don't
right?
realize how young this nation is.
Yeah, it's young as fuck. Like, but the first settlement in Scotland was 8,500 BC. So the Mesolithic period, right? Like after the Ice Age, we actually used to have something called Doggerland, which is funny because for American, I don't know if American viewers know the term dogging, but in England it means when you take your partner up into a car somewhere in a car park and you do things with them.
Oh,
If you know what I
dog.
mean? Aye, dogging. So that's the term that they use. We don't use that term, but some English people do.
Mhm.
But we had this thing called Doggerland, right? Which meant that there's the English Channel between England and France.
Yes.
That all used to be land.
Really?
Yeah, we had a huge landmass, and what happened is as the ice age occurred and they all melted, that all filled in and became the English Channel.
Okay. I did not know that.
So you hear people say, "Oh, how can you take like?" A lot of people say everyone that's in the UK must be an immigrant because it's an island, and it's like actually people could have stayed there way longer, and then the English Channel formed around them.
So
So it wasn't
descendants could have definitely been there before the English Channel even existed.
yeah, you could have been British before it became an island. How crazy is that?
Yeah, that is kind of
Um,
crazy. I had no idea about that. See, they don't teach us a lot about Europe. Like we're the fucking center of the universe here, so we think.
uh,
I don't
I
think we
have
are.
noticed. I think I spoke to you about this American lens, right? This is like this answers your question about what I think about America. The American lens, it's an absolute cancer to Americans because you have to understand that we're all human beings on this planet, right? So our lives can be totally vastly different depending on where we're standing, you
Yeah.
know? And what I'm going to say is that Americans don't leave America because your states are very different. They're varied. If
Yeah.
you want, you can go to California, and if you don't want to do that, you can go to Montana. You know what I mean? The mountains,
Yes.
or West Virginia, Blue
Yeah.
Ridge Mountains, right? Like you guys can go to New York, right? You've got bloody everywhere that you can think of, right? You've got Texas, right? So if you want to have a laugh, go to Texas and pull out a water gun. You're going to be filled with like 3,000 holes in like 5 seconds because Texas is mad, right?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are very rich in culture, and one thing that I've noticed about Americans is it goes back to the American lens. They say that I have an accent, right? But they fail to understand things like when I hear Americans say British accent, I cringe
I can
because
tell you're Scottish.
yeah, you can tell I'm Scottish, right? But
I'm
when
like Sean
they
Connery.
uh, but you've got like people that say British accent, you know what I mean? And Britain's one island, but do I speak that? Do I sound like I come from Wales? You know, or do I sound quite eloquent right now? I'm speaking more English, you know. But like, there's also like you go to Liverpool and they're Scouse. A Scouse accent throws off a lot of Americans. Like, is that even English? Um, Go to Newcastle in England, very different. You go to Scotland and you can understand me. Maybe I talk a bit quick. Maybe I say words that you don't quite get because it's slang and it's more, it's due to my location. We speak to each other differently.
Yeah.
If you go down in England, my missus, she's from England, and when I go down to see her family, she has to translate sometimes because some of those words just don't simply exist.
Uh-huh.
Because we speak Scots, we also speak Gaelic as well.
Okay.
So but not all of us. Gaelic is a dying language. It's a Celtic language that is dying out because English is so much more easier than Gaelic. I
Yeah.
think for the word forgetful in Gaelic is like 15 letters or something like that, which, it's a lot shorter in English. So people just, why not go for the easier option? So there's less people speaking in it, but I can still say like Kimarahahu, which means how are you and stuff like that. I can speak like that general amount.
How many
But then you
languages
also,
do you speak, dude?
um, I can't speak them fluently, not all of them. I can speak English fluently, of course, because that's where I was born, but I can speak bits on each language and it's only really enough to get by. It's not as if I'm going to be writing books in Spanish or Russian or anything like that, but just a little bit to get by. So I've went to Spain. I've been to Spain 3 times, so I know a wee bit of Spanish. Not a lot, but enough. Like I said the other on, una mesa para cuatro por favor, can I have a table for four, please? Or something like that.
Yeah.
You can go to the restaurant and at least order something, quesadillas and stuff. So it's it's pretty cool that you can do that. But not just that, a lot of people kind of shit on the Britain and the British Empire, but yet France can speak English, Germans can speak English. I don't
Yeah.
know everything about Germans, but everyone speaks English, right? So you got the English to think about that because English gave us a language that was so simple that most people can speak it. The other language that's really, really popular is Mandarin, but when you consider the size of China and it's got like 1 billion people, like
Yeah,
of course it's going to be
huge.
that
Yeah.
popular. No, Hindu, Punjabi and stuff like that. Their languages because there's 1 billion people in India, so yeah, that's quite popular too. But India speaks English as well because we used to run India to
Yes.
Pakistan. Um, so yeah, my opinion of America is
Yeah. Do you think
the
we're in trouble? I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, from an outsider's perspective, like, are you concerned?
I'm concerned about things like annexing countries. I'm concerned about not the US itself, but what it does and what that does afterwards. Because what Trump needs to realize is that in 15 years, 20 years, it will not be him or JD Vance that's in charge, right? And it will be another American. But the problem is that, I think it's China. They've had the same party in for like 80 years, and China does not forget. So when he's pissing them off, they're going to remember that. And I'm talking about not Winnie the Pooh that's in charge of China, right? But the next leader who's going to be in China, they're going to remember everything the US did. And guess what? They're spiteful. They are like the original commies. Have you seen what's it called again? It annoys me when you watch something so recently, yet it fades your memory when you try and think about it.
No.
Um, Tiananmen Square in China,
Yes.
where the guy stood up in front of a tank. The people in China are absolutely beautiful, by the way. Their culture is beautiful. I've spoke to Chinese people, I've befriended some, and I've asked them why they do what they do. And it's a very manner-filled country. They have got manners. They are very nice. If you went to their house and you'd be surprised how respectful they are. The way they present their food, they don't pray like you can imagine. Some people see grace and stuff. They don't do that, but everything they do feels very meaningful. It feels like these people
Uh,
they definitely know what it's like to be hospitable, and they
I've heard
definitely have
Japan's
that
like
there.
that too.
Japan's insane for that. Like, there's a guy I know. His name was Rick, and his mom and dad was from Japan.
Mhm.
And I was late to my university lecture, and he said sorry. Right? He's such a nice guy that he's saying sorry for me being late to the lecture. So these guys are really, really nice. They're very quiet spoken, but generally quite nice. It's quite funny because I think it's messed up. I'm not going to go into it too deep, right? But the US dropping 2 atomic bombs in Japan definitely humbled them. That's all I'm going to say
Oh
because
yeah.
they went from
Definitely.
having an empire to we're gonna take over Manchuria to let's make anime and Pokemon Go, and it's like
Yeah. I
totally
mean,
different
it's
to what it
such a
was.
such a significant but terrible part of history.
I think it was entirely necessary for Japan.
Well, they wouldn't quit.
They still won't. What do I mean by that? They have not apologized for what they did to American prisoners of war. They still haven't. They don't even acknowledge what they did in the war. If you go to Japan and you're raised in Japan as a child, when you do history in school, do you know what they say when we get into that topic of World War II? They say for some reason the US dropped 2 bombs on us. That's what Japan does. They don't actually teach you what they did, right? They want to cover up as much shit about. And you know what? Fair play to them. You know what I mean? They're not doing the same shit they used to do, but they're not willing to say what actually happened. So, maybe that's them trying to save some face. Maybe they're trying not to sound like the bad guys to their own people. Because
Uh,
I mean, I can understand it though, because Japanese people are very prideful, right? And I think if you look at Germany, Germany was just constantly being, oh, yous were the bad guys, yous were the bad guys, yous are literally the devil. And you see how Germany over time has just became this sort of soft, um, kind of like they're too scared to
yeah.
do anything, to have
Don't they
any
have
pride.
they have the best economy in Europe, right? I believe.
Uh, so it's awkward. Um, World War II definitely caused a lot of problems for Germany,
Yeah. Shit.
and we are still seeing this. If you look up Greece and their economic situation, Germany
That
can
was all.
really only survive, right, by asking Greece for their money back.
Hmm.
So Greece's economy fails because Germany is asking for the money back because Germany also has free university, right? But there's a difference.
Free
The whole
college.
of the U the whole of the UK doesn't get free university. Scotland does, right? But there is more people in London than the entirety of Scotland. There's to 6 million people in Scotland, there's about 7 or 8 million people in London. So we are a small substrata of people in the UK, and we get this privilege because of our government, our devolved government, Scottish government
That's
in
awesome,
Holyrood.
dude. I would have been a freaking doctor if college was free here.
Well, yeah, there's something I call the Goldilocks zones when it comes to US defense spending. So Trump wants to put up to 1 trillion. I say, nah. If you actually reduced it to 600 billion, you'd still be 3 times more powerful than China because
Yes.
China spends about on 192,000, or sorry,
Not only do we
192,000.
spend the highest, but like number two is like not even close, you know. I think like the most fucked up thing is that like um what are the things that have really like taken us out was like 9/11, it destroyed our economy. And they didn't need to use a military to get past that. It's like, all right, we want to take down the US. What can we do that moves us right past the military? So a couple box cutters and some flight lessons, and the next thing you know, it's like the biggest act of terrorism, I guess, not in the world, but that's ever happened here. Um, but also, Russia has been plotting to mess us up from the inside for years using spies and propaganda, and now they're posting fake news and stuff. They're setting up bots to send messages to Americans. They're messing with us, and definitely I think Trump's a huge part of their plan because it's divide and conquer, man. And like Trump is the most divisive political figure that I believe I'll ever see in my lifetime. Like I don't think we've been as divided since the Civil War. And it's like, dude, again, I have some people that I love that are MAGA. And it's
Yeah,
like, I just try not to think about it because it's like, so I feel like you're okay with someone who like sexually assaulted someone, with someone who's committed all these felonies, with someone who's a fraudster. I live in South Jersey and he bankrupted 3 casinos down here. How do you bankrupt the casino? It's like a license to print money. Um, but yeah, like he's notorious down here, like because Atlantic City is about an hour away, and that was where he did a lot of his dirt. He's from New York and whatnot. But
mhm.
I think he's a bad guy, and he seems to play on people's worst instincts, and it's just like it's become like a cult, man, where no matter what he says, people are going to agree and do mental gymnastics to get there, and it's at times so easy to not like these people because they're so confidently wrong that it's like you're cocky and you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And then I'm fake news, but it's like, dude, I dig and dig into everything that I'm looking for. Like I'll look at multiple sources. Will look at CNN and Fox to see what both sides are saying. I found a couple sites like thehill.com is a very good site for American politics. Doesn't really lean either way. Um, but also like I hang out in groups like conservative groups and just kind of see like take the temperature, see what people are saying, how they're feeling, and they've become incredibly racist, misogynist lately. Hating Jews too, especially anti-Semitic. It's nuts, dude. Like there are people saying women should have never even been given the right to vote. I think like 1 in every 13 people is a sociopath, and I swear all those people are MAGA. And a lot of them, the other people, I believe, are just weak-minded to propaganda. And have you ever watched Fox News?
yeah. A lot of Americans, it's interesting. You've probably not watched much BBC. You've probably not watched. We've got like lots of Euro news. It's kind of like
I
generic,
watched the
kind of.
BBC. I think it's good. I think it's better news than the shit we have here.
We've got Sky News, but Sky is owned by the same guy that owns Fox. So, but we are aware of this. We actually know who owns what before we watch it. That's a big thing in Europe. We will actually find out, okay, this media outlet, where else is it owned in the world? So we know that Sky and Fox is the same. Interestingly enough, Sky kind of changes depending on which country they're in. In Australia, they're extremely right wing. They've even got a lefties losing it show
Well, they're
in
trying to
Australia.
bring a right-wing guy into Australia this weekend, right? Timu Trump, they're calling him.
Do you know that? Like, I think I've said this to you as well. I'm quite normally quite a right wing person,
You don't come off
but
right-wing, at least not according to the American version.
well, this goes back again, American lenses, right? Like since 2015, how many presidents have you had?
What two?
Two. I've had six prime ministers since 2015.
Wow,
They've
how
been
does anybody
coming
get
in and out the
anything
door.
done though? Like that's just
Well,
nuts.
exactly. So we're living in basically what is a turning door all the time. You guys have that bit more stability when it comes to leadership. They have to be impeached. They have to be shot. They need to be like you guys have quite a sturdy thing where once they're in, they're in. You know what I mean? I think a lot of Americans that don't like Trump right now are thinking about just burying their head in the sand and just waiting out the next 4 years. But
Yeah,
then
but we're
if they
worried
do
because
that,
he's dismantling like the system.
see, that's kind of ironic to me though, because a lot of Democrats did speak about dismantling the system. This is very different. I understand your point, but when it said defund the police, defund this and that, I think a lot of like, that rhetoric that's used by one side will be used against them in another way. Maybe not the
Yeah.
same way they thought,
You
but
know,
that's
dude,
probably the
the the defund movement, I think it was a really bad label for something that was actually really well intentioned. And basically what they wanted to do was take away some police funding and then give it to, say, different types of first responders that were mental health experts. To get people that actually knew how to handle people to go to places and deal with people that are having crises. Because all right, so for me, I'm a bipolar sufferer, right?
mm,
I'm good. I don't think I'm gonna lose my shit and whatever, but a lot of these people do. And
mm,
if you're having a mental health crisis, I think the last thing you need is a house that's surrounded by police and spotlights in your face and just fucking utter madness. Like a guy in my county, I think like a month ago, had a mental health crisis. And the next thing you know, dude, like they're breaking down his door. The fucking SWAT team is there. They got drones going in the house. It's like,
just
you know,
checking the recording time. By the way, we've got like a
yeah,
minute and a
maybe
half now.
I
So
just needed someone to talk to just chill me out. Like, I think
yeah,
that a mental health professional is a way more comforting person to, speak to you in that kind of situation than a cop
mm,
who's automatically, amped up to 10 volume
yeah.
aggression. They're supposed to, what's the word? Like, I don't know.
Like just basically make the situation more calmer and de-escalate it,
Yes,
and
de-escalate. That's the word I'm looking for. They're supposed to de-escalate, but it's like, dude, again, you were talking about how there are good cops in America, but some of the experiences I've had here, man, are absolutely fucking terrible.
I'm going to apologise for that since it was Scotland that made the Pinkerton agency that then became the police.
I didn't even know that. We're
Yeah,
about to run out of time again in like a minute, dude. We're like flying.
yeah, I know. We don't stick to one topic though, and I think the viewers are going to laugh when I say that because it's true. But it's actually decent. There's so much to talk about, and so little time as
Yeah,
well.
I know. But you know what, dude? Like, I think if we're gonna keep doing this, we need to like think of some topics and stuff. But I mean, it's fine. Like I'm, if you look at podcasts, dude, people are bouncing all over the place. So yeah, we have like, hold on, I'm
Mm.
just gonna stop this. All right, here we go. All right, so where were we before this cut?
We were talking about mental health.
Yes, and how the cops will come and break your door down and drag you out to help you with your mental health issue, put you in a fucking straitjacket or something.
You will accept
Right.
my help or face the consequences.
Yeah, exactly. Let us help you, or So, if someone has a mental health crisis in Scotland,
Yeah,
what's the response to it? Like, what happens?
depends on the situation. If
They're
there's
not
a
threatening
focal,
anyone. They don't have a fucking gun or anything.
oh, okay. Well, I can give you a good example of this. If you're feeling suicidal, or if you say to a loved one you were suicidal and then you left the house, for example, and they couldn't find you, they could contact the police. What the police will do is the police will try and search for you. Once they find you, they'll bring you back to your family or the person that phoned to make sure that, they can see you and that your family knows you're okay. Then afterwards, they'll put you in the police van or car and take you to the nearest hospital that has health care facilities, something like that. And they'll do an evaluation. Um, in that evaluation, not everyone will get the choice. It depends entirely on the person, but you'll often get the choice of going into some kind of psychiatric facility to get more deeply monitored. Because you have just talked about or tried to kill yourself, so they will accept people that will say, yes, I need that help and I definitely need that level of help. But they also accept you going home and receiving antidepressants. They'll accept that. There is no arrest. You will probably get driven back to your house by the police at the end of that. You don't. It's not when they drop you off at the hospital. The police are outside waiting just in case you become violent, if that is the case. But don't worry about it. The police in Scotland only use batons and tasers.
They don't even have
Um,
guns, do they?
no, no, you need armed response. It's called FART, Fast Action Response Team. Um, so you only get them if it's like that person's got a gun or that there's a terror thing happening. Um, in my entire life, I think my hometown FART was only needed once, and it was this 18-year-old guy that managed to get a sniper rifle from somewhere and had shot someone, and they eventually apprehended him without killing him or shooting
Yeah,
him.
man. I mean, we have like armed government agents all over the place. Like, if I'm fucking speeding in my car,
Mhm.
next thing you know, dude in my face that has a fucking gun, it's just so unnecessary. And,
No, the police here are usually, like from what I've seen, they're usually pretty chill. They will try and talk to you first, and they won't be too aggressive. Do you know, I've seen in America people immediately have their hands in their holsters. That's like, if you're doing that, you shouldn't be a cop, right?
yeah,
I know that these police, when they go out, they risk their lives. Same with ours. But ours could get stabbed, they could get anything happen to them, acid thrown in their face a lot, but they still don't carry guns, right? That's not an argument against guns. What I'm just saying is they don't, but they don't immediately put their hands in their taser either. They don't immediately put their hands in their bat. They don't pull out the baton either straight away.
yeah,
What they do is they
so
treat you like a human being first, and
here's
then
an
if your
experience.
behaviour
Yeah.
gets bad, they'll then slap in. And I've seen police officers be really nice, and then this guy just blindsides them and hits them, and then the police officers here, well, at that point you've hit one of the Queen's, you know, officers, and at that point he can just headbutt you, do what the fuck he likes.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I've seen
I'll
police
tell you
officers go
something
mad.
that happened to me when I was younger or whatever. I was in my teens and I had my first car. I had just gotten a license, and the car had an issue with overheating. Right, it was my first car. It was all fucked up. So I would carry gallon jugs of water in my trunk so that if the car overheated, because the radiator leaks, so I would have to remember to put it in, and I'm a kid, so I'm not remembering. So it's going to overheat, and then I've got to wait for it to cool down, and then put water into the engine, so that I can get where I'm going. So I was driving with some of my friends. We were out in the boondocks. Don't get me wrong, I like to party and smoke weed and stuff, but we weren't doing anything at that particular time. So the car overheats, and I think there's like four or five of us, and we're standing to the rear of the car as the car is on the side of the road, and we're in the middle of nowhere. So I mean, and out there, like the cops aren't so prevalent, but this cop came out of fucking like nowhere, right? Um,
Mm.
I'm opening my trunk, and I grab a jug of water. He pulls up behind us. I grab a jug of water, and I'm turning around with the jug of water in my hand to say, "Hey, greet the cop or whatever." Um, he throws his door in front of him, pulls a fucking gun, and like aims it at me. Like I think he almost shot me because I
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
wild.
turned around with something in my hand, and I was like 17, dude. I wasn't even. It's just crazy, and I could tell that something was wrong because he became so like he was like nervous and nice. He's like, "Oh my God, is there anything I can help you with?" Blah blah blah. Like it seemed like he knew he almost fucked up. Like how close
Mm.
was I?
I mean, it's not even a case of his intuition not to pull the trigger. It could be a simple mistake. If that's safe, if it isn't set to safety and it's set to live fire, you know, it's kind of weird because as a Brit, especially, we do have gun ownership. Like you can get it. It's just that you have to have particular reasons for it. You can actually join a gun club, a shooting range, and then you can own one, but you can't use it for self-defense. So even if somebody's coming to your house with a gun, you cannot use your gun. A stupid law, guaranteed, right? somebody's coming to your house with a gun, you've got a gun, you're going to use the gun, right? It's just common sense.
You can't use
But
it.
you can't use it by law. No, you can only use it for sports shooting, like clay pigeon shooting, which is sounds posh, but I've done it and it was quite funny. You just shoot out these little pucks and you shoot
Yeah,
them.
pool.
Yeah, pull and then bang bang. It's quite fun. But you've got that. Um, you can own certain like I'm probably not an expert on this exact topic, so I can't really give you a lot of information. But there has been YouTubers I've seen from England, especially, where they've got gun ownership, and I think a lot of Americans would be surprised by what they can buy despite the laws, because the laws are insane. See, do you know? Do you guys have air rifles?
Yeah, like BB guns.
Yeah, you
No,
need a
yeah, you can
license
get
for
those
that here.
like for nothing, whatever.
Yeah, you need a license here.
Really?
Yeah,
Or like a
to
pellet
get an
gun.
actual for a pellet gun, you need a license, right? And crossbows need a license. Slingshots, most of them are illegal now. You need a license for like nearly everything that you could use as a weapon.
Mm.
And it's crazy. Despite the fact that carrying a knife out in public is illegal, people are still doing it. People are still getting stabbed, and that's why. And I think there's a statistic between London and New York, and London is a lot more dangerous at times than New York is,
Yeah, I've heard that.
despite despite the fact you guys can pull out, your 9 millimeters. And it's really funny. A lot of Americans don't understand that you've got a lot of European manufacturers of weapons that you
Huh.
don't really know. So you might have heard of the Scar H, which is used by the American military. It's
Yeah.
an assault rifle. Again, I say assault rifle. Americans that are pro gun are probably going to get annoyed at that because, oh, sniper rifles aren't sniper rifles unless you're using them for sniping. Yeah, I get that. And you can use a sniper rifle as another type of rifle or
Yeah,
assault
but you're
rifle.
just describing a long gun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you get people going, oh, it's an assault rifle, but it's not. I know the difference between semi-auto, full auto, single shot, burst mode. And obviously, I've learned that because I've played a lot of games when I'm in America or maybe an army game and seen that. But there's things like the Spaz 12 shotgun. Don't know if you've seen that before. It's used by SWAT teams in America a lot. It's called the Spaz 12 shotgun.
I don't know. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up. See it.
It's
But
quite a
like the
distinct gun.
barrel on the bottom.
It's got this interesting bit at the top. It's a unique design. SPAS 12.
Okay,
Uh,
it looks yeah. Okay, it looks like it comes from Europe.
yeah, it's Italian. And the Beretta M9, which is a handgun used by cops, that's again Italian. You've got things like yeah, you probably heard about an MP5, like a machine gun,
Yeah, absolutely. It's very popular.
German. Um, the you've got the MTAR, that's Israel. The Uzi, Israel. A lot of the guns that Americans love to go to the shooting range with are actually made in Europe. We, a lot of Europeans are actually really proud of the gun history they've got, and it's kind of overshadowed a lot because Americans are like, oh, but can you own them? Can you own them though? Right, and I get that, but for a long time, Europe actually you could own guns. You could in Switzerland at a certain age, you have to learn how to
Everybody
use a
in
gun.
Switzerland has a gun. Like it's almost like
Yeah,
compulsory or something. Shooting
it
lessons are like
depends.
in school. You take shooting lessons in Switzerland.
I don't know. I think you do at some point. There's like it's for national defense. In case they're ever invaded, they need to be able to make sure everyone's trained to fight, which is
Uh-huh.
awesome. It's good for them, you know. Because they get to experience what it's like to have gun ownership, to look after the gun, to dismantle the gun, disassemble it, reassemble it. They get all of that. They
Mm.
also get training. They get to use it safely. They get taught that. One of my critiques of the American system is that whenever you buy a gun, no matter what state you're in, the person that you're buying the gun from should ask you or uh, at least suggest training. Like, are you happy without training for this gun, right? And that means if you go on to, let's say, negligently shoot someone, you can't use negligence as a thing 'cause you had the training,
Mhm.
right? So if somebody murders someone and says, "Oh, the gun went off by itself," well, if you've been trained and you've got that training, then that shouldn't have happened because you know what should be done. It's like somebody that has a driving license or a driving test.
Mhm.
Another thing that's really cool about Europe that shits on America, sorry, but I have to say there's things that America does better than us your healthcare
No,
system, you
I
barely
want to
make.
know what you're doing better than us. I want people to hear this, because so many people don't, like again, they feel like we're the center of the universe, and they don't realize like what it's like in Europe, and that you guys do have a lot of things that
Well,
your systems, especially I believe Scandinavian model of like democratic socialism. Um,
yeah. Again, I'm right wing, so when it comes to they have sure all of that, but when I've had people from Denmark visit my country, and they say it is cheaper to come here, buy a car, and then import it or export it than it is for them to buy that car in their own country
so there's crazy
because it's
taxes on it.
yeah, there's crazy taxes. So yeah, they have these great systems, but it comes at a cost, and so it's kind of like a balancing act where a lot of people there are kind of they're kind of frustrated because yeah, sure they have everything that they want normally, but like the price of a beer, like a pint, is insane. In fact, the price of a pint of Guinness in America is insane. Somebody told me the price recently, and it was like $9 or some crazy
Probably.
shit, maybe more. And I'm like, what? Because it's like £2 odds here, which is like the equivalent of $3 or $4. So it's like that's even more. That's $5 more. And people will probably watch this are going to go, that's the rest of the world taking the piss out of America. No, it's not. It's just that there's a big fucking thing called an ocean in between us, and so the price of things go up. But
You use the Great Britain pound.
yes, we don't use the euro, unlike other European countries.
So the UK doesn't use the euro.
No,
Okay.
which saved our life big time. Other countries like France. So I don't know if you've heard about the AfD in Germany,
The
the Alternative
AfD,
for Deutschland.
yeah, the
Yeah.
alternate, yeah, they were like the super right wing, the thing Elon Musk was supporting.
Yeah, right. Okay, so interesting point in this. You'll hear people say, "Oh, these are like the new Nazis," but the leader of the AfD is
Okay.
well, lesbian libertarian person, right? So while she's in charge, I don't think they're Nazis. However, that doesn't stop somebody from gaining leadership of that party and then changing it drastically. I'm not going to deny that, but that's not the case as it is right now. I think that there's a serious question because Germany's the one that opened the floodgates, like I mentioned earlier on with immigration. The AfD feel responsible for jumping in and being like, no, we've got to stop it here because they feel like they need to take control and responsibility, and I think they should as well. Do you know that there's other countries that, for example, Poland? Poland doesn't like immigration very much. They do not.
Hmm.
They've got a border wall. They'll shoot people that come through. Just don't try and illegally immigrate to Poland, basically.
Huh.
They'll happily accept immigrants if you want to go there and work and stuff like that. They're happy with that. But it's the same like me in Britain. I'm quite right wing on border situations. I want a tight, secure border. Not because I'm racist and I hate these people, it's because I'm black. I don't care if you were white. I don't care if you're Asian. I don't care if you're from the Middle East. I don't care if you're from the United States of fucking America. If you're coming into my country illegally, I don't want you. You're getting sent back. If you come here and apply legally, you're warmly welcomed,
What's the
right?
process like? Is it a hard, difficult process to become a citizen of the UK or Scotland, or is it?
Unfortunately, it's actually quite difficult for some people because you've got to make a certain income.
Okay.
You've got to make a certain income, and I have uh, listened to American YouTubers as well that have came here as students and they want to live here, and the income that you are required to move here is much higher than a graduate would make. So an American who comes here would then do their degree and not be able to get that wage straight away and then possibly get deported. That I don't like. That I would happily try and figure out and work something out there because these are people that they've learned a skill here. Like that's pretty cool. They could potentially help with the economy and stuff. The problem is that we have these weird sort of boundaries where we're like, oh, we've got to increase the amount of money you have to make to live here. So
Mhm.
people that were previously in a relationship, the partner was foreign. Well, all of a sudden now they don't make that income, so they've got to go. And it's like that is a joke. And that's me saying that is I think that that's shitty for immigrants. Legal immigrants should be getting like a good like a good experience, right?
So you as a
Compared to
right
illegal
winger,
immigrants.
as a European right winger, you feel you want immigrants to have a good experience. Like you're
I
not.
want I want I want legal immigrants that apply to get the best experience. I want illegal immigrants that come without being invited or without even saying hi, because an illegal immigrant doesn't need to share with you their criminal record. These people could be terrorists. I mean, I'm not saying they are, but they could be. But they could also be rapists. They could be whatever you don't know. And that's one of the things that a lot of people said about Trump. He wasn't saying that all Mexicans were rapists in that sense. I understand where he's coming from with that because it's not a case of all Mexicans are. That's not true. But you don't know who the fuck these people are. You don't know anything about them, so they could be. So there's an argument to be made there. And in the UK especially, it's like we've had it where, like I mentioned earlier on, somebody from Hamas came. Fucking Hamas. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but we had this thing called the Manchester Arena bombing. Well, the family of the guy who did that attack fled from Libya, from Gaddafi,
Uh-huh.
who Britain appointed. So Britain did a coup d'etat, like America does,
Britain
you know.
appointed Gaddafi? I didn't know that.
Hmm?
Britain
Well, yeah,
appointed.
basically. See, do you know anything about the Shah in Iran? Why Iran hates America? So basically, what happened is there's this company called British Petroleum, right?
Hey,
Who are now American owned.
they had the big spill in the Gulf Coast.
That's it. They used to be really British, but now they've got more American investors behind them, so they're more American, right? They lean that way. But in the 70s, Iran had a leader that wanted to nationalize the oil,
Yes.
right? BP were going to lose billions. So they went to MI6 and the CIA and said, listen,
MI6, that's your spies, right? Like
yeah,
your
that's our.
CIA.
So we've got MI5. MI5 in Britain is our domestic group. MI6 is espionage and spying.
So what
As
would
far
James
as
Bond be? Would James Bond be MI6?
MI6,
Okay.
MI6. MI5 is I see a suspicious package in the subway, and I'm like MI5. You can phone them, and you say, "Listen, there's a suspicious package," or you can phone the transport police. But you're like, if you see a guy who's wearing like, a balaclava and he looks armored out to shit with like a military type vest on, and you think that guy, there's going to be an attack, and you're really certain there's going to be an attack. MI5 has a number that you can phone and they'll literally treat it like a priority one incident. And they'll literally come with teams, bomb disposal, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so
So
you
that's what
wouldn't call
MI5 for.
the regular police or fart for that?
No, you could phone 999 and say, I think there's been a bomb, but all the police are going to do is hang up that phone from you and phone MI5,
Okay.
basically. They're going to just go above that. Um, the police are good for violent situations where somebody's been violent or somebody has a gun. That's not necessarily terrorism, but for terrorism, MI5 is who you go to when there's an attack in Britain. A lot of people just phone the police anyway, and the police will contact them, obviously. But there's nothing stopping an individual from phoning MI5 and saying, listen, I think there's a bomb in this station. And depending on how popular it is with all the people, they might it's even quicker apparently. I don't know. I haven't needed to do that, thank God. But yeah, you can phone MI5 directly and say, listen, there's an unsecure package and there's somebody walking away from it, running away from it with a balaclava in a station. It looks suspicious as fuck. My name is such and such. Like,
So,
here's my number. Whatever.
you were saying that you're right wing and how Denmark pays a lot of taxes and stuff because they have these systems. But
Mm,
your country, you have universal health care. You have free
yeah.
college, right?
Mm,
So, I
yeah.
mean, to us, that's a very left wing thing here. We don't have that. I guess like how much do you pay in taxes? Like what percentage? Like are things more expensive for this or like
It's a tiered tax bracket. But the problem is, um, let's say you get taxed more at 40 grand, right? You would probably just ask your employer for 39, so you avoid that tax bracket.
okay,
So there's a lot of people that do that. So let me just quickly grab those details for you.
okay.
Just because I don't know them off the top of my head.
Yeah,
If I
because
did,
here,
they'd probably be looked up.
obviously we pay a good chunk of tax and most of it goes to fucking the military. And
Well,
you
to
know,
answer your question a little bit, like our National Health Service, what we spend per GDP is still a lot less than what the US spends, and you guys still have to pay for it.
mm,
So, if I'm being honest, I think that for the US, a lot of it needs to be dealt with by the state. There's a lot of states that just simply don't do a lot for their people, and and what I'm saying is like, see, California, it's seen as like a sort of Democrat state,
they do a ton for
but I don't know if they do a ton for them. Maybe not in the right way. Maybe it's a misunderstanding because what California does for its people, I don't. I don't know how exactly to describe this, but I think that there's things that the Democrats could do differently. Like Bernie Sanders, for example.
That's
I
my
know that he
dude.
was yeah, I know he's really big, but there's a lot of things that the Democrats don't like about Bernie Sanders, right? And I think that the type of like, so see Bernie Sanders to me, he is basically what the Democrats ought to be at this point. There's no point
Now, on
jumping
the
around the bush,
European, on the political spectrum in Europe, Bernie, he would be like a centrist there, right?
pretty much.
Okay,
He's
not
he's
even
very
left
much like
wing.
if you want a direct comparison, he's basically a guy called Jeremy Corbyn. We had him, and our left wing establishment party didn't like him the same they didn't like Bernie Sanders because he's a bit too much. He's not a big fan of Israel. He's not about you know what I mean because they're not. Yeah, Jeremy Corbyn was pro-Palestinian, right? He was a left-wing guy, and I think Bernie Sanders also has a little bit of that. Maybe I'm wrong. He himself might be Jewish, but he can still call out things like Israel's actions. Still, you know, it doesn't
Uh-huh.
mean that you're against Jews because you call out that. But you could talk about it for days about the Palestine fucking Israel thing. That's totally
Yeah,
different. But
it's a huge mess, and that's another thing is it's like if you don't want the Palestinian people to like get blown up and mowed down, then you're pro Hamas. Again, it's these extremes. Like just because I feel like this doesn't mean I feel like that. You know,
well,
if I want like Palestine to have their own state and not keep getting murdered, I'm not anti-Semitic.
yeah, I mean, it's very very awkward for me because of the Balfour Agreement, which was actually Britain's role in this conflict. Um, a lot of people know about World War One. Do you know much about World War One?
Honestly, man, no. I don't know like a ton about world history going back that far. I know more about like the political structure, political science, and stuff like that. If I need to dig into history, I'll just look online and find some stuff. But what were you saying?
Just going to highlight something you said there about being like that far back. To us, that's like literally last week, World War Two.
Yeah, because your country's so old. How old is
But
your
to you
country?
guys, well, if we're going by the United Kingdom, we're going back to 1707, which is literally like 70 years apart from America. When you're talking about the actual Union itself, the United Kingdom, because we were 1707. Um, that all happened. The whole Union happened because of something that happened in 1695. It was called the Darien Scheme, where Scotland basically the elites that lived in Scotland, independent Scotland, basically decided to try and create the Panama Canal.
Hmm.
So this in the 1600s, like I don't know if you know, the Panama Canal was created in 1904, and in 1695, Scotland was like, we're going to make it. So we were really ahead of our time. However, because of disease, because of having to fight the Spanish Armada and stuff like that, it became impossible. So 25% of Scotland's economy went to shit, and we had to join the Union because there was no other choice. We had
Oh,
no money left. So we had to join. That was part of the conditions. They would pay off our debt. We joined them. And that's where the British Empire comes into play. But by that point, I'm pretty sure England had itself started colonising places around the world.
mm,
Um, but yeah, Scotland's that old that we have fought the Third Reich. We have fought the Second Reich in World War Two. We have fought the First Reich, which was Rome. And the Romans actually went into England and invaded it and took over it. In Scotland, they couldn't take it over. It was just too insane for them. So this is the same Roman Empire that took over all of Europe, Germany, France, England,
yeah.
came to Scotland and built a fucking wall. And it was like, nope, not having any of that shit. And I actually live a 10-minute walk away from the Roman wall. I can still go there to this day.
Really?
Yeah, it's right, just literally out my back garden. If I was to just keep looking down, I can see the hill where that is.
Yeah, speaking
And
of empires, man, I feel like we're an empire. We were, and I feel like we're
uh,
collapsing ourselves.
I've not even got into my conspiracy theories. Like I don't talk about them most of the time because I am a huge fan of objectivity and fact. I don't like talking about conspiracy theories, but I have them. Like you've got to speculate in some extent. But right before America's explosion with the military industrial complex, I mean, these guys, they see Gulf War and stuff like that in the 90s, that was just a testing run. In 1998 or 99, the British Empire officially ended, right? And when it did, it almost felt as if it was like a passing of the torch. A couple of years later, 9/11, Iraq, Afghanistan, America was basically becoming the new British Empire
Hmm.
in a sense. Because you think about it, you speak English like us. You, you don't know if you know this, but it was a Scottish man that made the US Navy.
I did not know that.
So a lot of our people created the things that you guys use. So it felt very much like, oh, this is very much like a British spawned kind of thing, where the 13 colonies, for as much as people say, oh yeah, France and Spain had an influence in the US, there were 13 British colonies. There were, you know what I mean? So America was founded on these British principles. Now, I don't know if you know this, we've also got a statue of George Washington in England.
Really?
Yeah, we have. We've got it down next to Westminster because George Washington was an Englishman. He was born in England.
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, he wasn't born here. He'd have to,
So the
Yeah.
big that when it came to like the wars in America and the independence wars, there was somebody I can't remember the exact guy's name, but it was a lord down in England that said we shouldn't hate the Americans because their goals and aims are very admirable. They just want to be free. They don't want to be told what to do. How can you hate that? That's like, but yet again, America goes on about, oh, we defeated the British. Like, so what? Haiti defeated us before you did. Haiti revolted against the British Empire and won before America did. And I mean, if you look at Haiti today, they're fucking eating people. There's a lot of cannibalism in Haiti. It's fucked
Yeah.
up. But yeah, and in some sense, some countries would have been better off if they let Britain run them until Britain gave them their land back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Canada and Australia, for as much as like they can say, oh, we were colonized by Brits, they never complain because they're actually better off by the end of it. In
Yeah.
fact,
Sure.
to move to Canada, the requirements are much higher than it is in Britain. Like you need to have a certain amount, you need to have a sponsor, you need to have all this. You don't need to do that in the UK. You just need to make a certain amount of income, and you should be able to come in. So, a lot of countries actually benefited. India, yes, during World War II, we were basically shit out of luck. Britain was the only country in Europe fighting against Hitler. Like every other country had been taken over, basically,
Uh-huh.
except Switzerland and some other countries. But we were the only ones fighting them for a full year before the US joined. So we were absolutely fucked. The Germans were bombing American ships that were delivering packages to us, but
Uh-huh.
we were also getting food from India and stuff like that. But we were basically creating a famine in India by how much food we were needing and all that kind of stuff because we were rationing in Britain. We were like using very little and trying to stockpile as much food as possible because it was a war in Europe.
Hmm.
So the Indians don't always have a fond memory of us. Um, Although some Indians do, but a lot of Indians don't, and I can see why. After Britain left, or people say got kicked out, but Gandhi was a very peaceful leader. We decided to leave because he was very effective at
Yeah.
getting Britain to leave. But after we left, guess what happened to India?
What's that?
The Indian and Muslim communities split apart and created Pakistan and India. They used to be one state when Britain was in control, and all of a sudden now, like it's talk about multiculturalism. Well, these people are no longer multicultural. They had to split and make their own nations. So when Britain was there, Muslims and Hindus lived together. As soon as we leave, that's when the religious divide comes in. And now we've got this issue right now in India with Kashmir, where there's been a terror attack, and these are Pakistan and India. They both have nuclear bombs, by the way.
Yeah.
It's not like Ukraine and Russia, where Russia's got the bombs and Ukraine doesn't. Both of these countries they've both got a stockpile. I think Pakistan's got like 127 or 172, maybe I got the numbers mixed up, but something like that, warheads, right?
Yes.
So 100 odd nukes, and Pakistan has. India is much bigger, but it's like you've got two countries with nuclear capabilities right now. Right now, having a big whose dick's bigger contest, right?
Yeah.
That's
Not good.
basically what's happening, right? But if Britain was in charge, when Britain was in charge, these people never fought. I'm not saying this is an argument to bring back the British Empire, by the way. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But before Britain went into India, they didn't have any fucking schools. They did have kingdoms, and they were very rich when it comes to resources and farming and all that kind of stuff. But when it came to literature, when it came to engineering, like we did actually pioneer a lot of their stuff. Now in Canada and places like that, they're Native Americans. Now I've actually got Native American family members. Like I've got family in Canada
Yeah.
that are first generation immigrants to Canada who have actually went and their partners are native to Canada. So they do the whole is it Cherokee and all the different tribes? They're one of the tribes, and they still live life quite peacefully. I mean, they've got their spears and stuff like that, and they've got
Mhm.
boats with paddles, and they've customized them. And my uncle, who's their grandfather, he gets sent stuff to Scotland from Canada, and it's basically all their paddles and oars and stuff that they've made. These Native Americans, so it's really cool. But the Native Americans, like the Canadians, what was it called again? The Native Americans in Canada got abused by the church,
Yes. Okay.
and so they don't like us either. And I can understand that. I totally understand that. I mean, there was I can't remember, was it Kamloops? Yeah, that's it, Kamloops, Canada, where the Queen visited and a bunch of kids went missing. It was weird. Even as a Brit, I look at that and go, hmm, right? Because, and it's to say, do you know what? I'm 100%. I'm in Britain right now, and the Americans that don't think we've got free speech. I hate the royal family, right? I'm not a royalist. I'm right wing, but I'm not a
They're
royalist,
weird.
and I can say that. I can say that. Prince Andrew, the Queen's son, was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah,
Virginia
he was with
Giuffre was trying to get.
Virginia Giuffre or whatever her name was.
Aye, exactly, right.
Yeah.
But
There's a picture
he
of it.
is not. He's not the only royal family member that's been accused or linked to paedophiles. Jimmy Savile is one of the biggest high profile cases in the UK. He was like somebody that was on the BBC, and he went into a lot of children's home and abused kids that had disabilities, right?
Mhm.
And he was best friends with the now King of England, right? I don't really have time for people that want to associate with nonsense and paedophiles. I hate them, right?
No, it's
That's why
fine.
I'm not a fan of the royal family. I don't care what blood you've got. I don't care how blue your blood is according to the royal family. I don't give a fuck. If you're a nonce, forget about it. I'm done. Right? Wood chipper time. That's something that, you know, you get people here that are loyalists. There's a big difference. You don't get this in America. We've got unionists, people that are pro-union.
Uh-huh.
You also had loyalists in America. If you actually go, you're in New Jersey, right? There's some Eastern Coast people in America that are really big fans of Britain still. They're
Weird.
called loyalists. In Canada, you've got these Presbyterian people that came from Scotland. Like a lot of people, like is it you guys do Thanksgiving because of these guys? Oh, what they called? They went to
Yes.
America. Was that?
Yes. I was just saying yes. Yes.
Yeah, there's these guys. The reason why you guys have Thanksgiving is because these guys came from Britain and brought Protestantism over to America, and that's why you've got Thanksgiving. Um, and a lot of them are really thankful. I was on a train down to England, and this guy from California, of all places, this little Asian guy is like, I'm from California, and I was like, oh, nice to meet you. And you know, we appreciate Americans. When we say Americans, we go, oh, you know, somebody that's willing to leave the country. You know, somebody that actually has a passport in America. Because I
I
know a
would
lot of them
love to
don't.
get out of here.
I think that every American should travel to at least one European nation. Um, because it really is an eye opener. But each country is different in Europe. Again, we might be the size of states, but we're culturally different. Even
Mhm.
every country's got a difference. You go to the east of Germany, the west of Germany, they're very different. They've got different cultures and different ways of saying things, even sometimes different languages.
Yeah, even though
Belgium, for
Germany is
example.
like, even though Germany's like one whole country now, I've heard like that the or East and West Germany are still very like conservative and liberal. They still kind of have this a lot of the same ideals. There's just not a wall there anymore.
Yeah, and yeah, I just think there's been a lot of like JD Vance came out and started speaking about the UK's speech laws,
He's a
and
prick. I just really don't care for him.
I had a bone to pick with that because he is. But what he said was is that speech laws matter in the UK because they affect American citizens when they visit. And I'm like, well, aren't you guys deporting people when they come and talk about Palestine? Is that not a bit of a slap in the face? Is that not just a bit of
Yeah, yeah,
hypocrisy?
they're canceling people's student visas. Yes.
And people are going, oh, but these people are protesting. They're not here to protest. And it's like, well, say they weren't protesting. Say they were just voicing their opinion in a classroom, right, which they're allowed to do.
Mhm.
The Constitution doesn't say they can't. You know, that's just a good thing to point out is that you can. It just says people. It doesn't say American citizens born there
Yeah.
or not.
And the Supreme
But
Court has ruled that non-citizens have constitutional rights.
Yeah, and do you know what? There was one time I lost my shit with Trump voters. I lost my shit once, and it's because there was a Scottish page, right, on Facebook that was posting satirical memes as it always does, and it decided to put some up about Trump. And do you know what these dickheads did?
What's
These
that?
Americans, these Republicans. Now you're living in the Republic of America, the United States of America, right?
Mhm.
These so-called Republicans, these so-called patriots, these so-called lovers of the founding fathers, reported it to the UK government as hate speech to shut down this person's voice. These fucking pieces of shit didn't like what somebody had to say and tried to censor them, even though in America you can't do that.
Yeah,
So
well, they only
how
like free
pro
speech because when they're saying what they want at this point, like it's very
but phoning and reporting another country's citizens to their own government for something they say, that's like for say what you want about Britain's speech laws. I mean, it is fucked up. We should fix it. But that is so messed up that somebody goes, "Oh, we've got free speech, but they don't. Let's try and fuck about with it." Like, nah, that's bullshit. You know. So that pissed me off. I've never seen Democrats do that, but there's like cancel culture and stuff, and I just think we need to get a grip. There is going to be racists out there. There's going to be horrible xenophobic people. There's going to be people that hate you no matter what your sexuality is, your gender. In fact, you might have
yeah.
people
Some
that hate
people just need to
everybody.
hate, dude.
Yeah, they just love hating. I don't think throwing them in jail is going to make a shit a difference. They're going to come out even more spiteful. If you, we don't really have a lot of time. We've got like less than a minute left of this recording, but I recommend Americans look up Count Dankula, a Scottish guy that got arrested for making a video about his pug being a Nazi. Like
Mhm.
it's literally a joke. Like it literally was a joke.
All right. So yeah, this is about the cut. You want to do one more?
It's up to you, man.
Yeah, dude, I'm down to do one more. So I'm just gonna let this cut, and then we'll do another four because I guess it's doing 40-minute shifts. We'll do another 40
Yeah.
minutes, and yeah, and then I'm gonna splice it together, see how it comes out. So I'll see you in a minute.
Right, no problem, man.
All right,
Will it go for the full 40?
all right. So excuse me. Tell me, what do most Europeans think about Trump?
Um, Without telling you my opinion of Trump, I can tell you like a general one that's probably more accurate.
Yeah,
A lot of Europeans don't like Trump. A lot of them don't like him. They think even if you took away all of his policies, right? Um, just remove them all from your head. Borders, tariffs, just get rid of them all, right?
mhm,
And in this case, I just think about him as a person. If you think about Barack Obama, now again, forget his policies, forget everything he did. Think about their demeanor. Think about how they spoke in public. Think about how calming it was with Obama versus Trump, who kind of thrives from the chaos. With Obama, it's here's the plan. It's going to be orderly. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. Here's the plan. Trump's like, you don't have the cards, right? Just trust the plan, right? They'll be okay. And it's just like, no, mate. Like nobody can be calm with that. That you have, he said to Kim Jong Un, I've got a red button too, and it's bigger than yours,
yeah,
right? It's like, see that. That is nothing but escalation. I didn't agree with a lot Obama did. Thanks Obama, right? That the meme. I didn't agree with everything that guy did when it comes to Medicare and stuff. I feel like, to be honest with you, Bernie Sanders, he came up with a uh, better, how do you put it, concept of how the healthcare system could work in America.
yeah. Single payer system, I think it was.
But the way Obama did it, I didn't agree with it. Right? Again, we're not talking about policies here. I'm not an Obama supporter. I'm not a Trump supporter. I agree with some things and I disagree with others. I'm just a free thinker. I don't even. It doesn't even matter what I think because I'm not American. But when it comes to like Obama, all I think about is, damn, it was really calm back then. You know what I mean? Even when he was responsible for Osama bin Laden dying, it was just so, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. You know what I mean? It's like very,
Yeah,
and it was very presidential. It was very like, oh damn, this guy's like so calm and chill. You know what I mean? Even though he could have been an absolute animal, like it was. Like one thing I hate about Obama was the drone strikes in the Middle East. A lot of Democrats, I have to say, that there was a lot to learn from Obama in terms of like, and again, no offense meant by this, but the sort of purple haired pro feminism, pro BLM, pro all this. Obama did really well and succeeded, and most Americans voted for him, not because of really, I have to say, it maybe isn't the best reason to vote for somebody, but he was very calm. His demeanor was really cool. He didn't go for the crazy out there fucking purple hair activist kind of thing, which I think a lot of Democrats now, for some reason, have said, oh, that's a good thing. I think activism is the killer of the left right now, regardless of whether in the US or not. In Britain, we are seeing people like when we're having sensitive discussions about immigration, right?
Mhm.
We're seeing people who are just generally worried parents talk about immigration, and these leftist activists in the UK are very quick to go racist, right?
Yeah.
Shutting down that conversation from the get go, shooting themselves in the foot because now they've got the centrist person who could have probably voted for them is now saying, I'm not going to vote for the leftist anymore because you've just called me a racist. And we're seeing that in the UK. Even if somebody who, like Joe Rogan, he's a good example of this, right? Traditionally a Democrat, but then after everything that's happened the past couple of years, he's kind of went the other way. So my advice to Democrats in America, just I know he's Trump, I know he's crazy, I know he's mental, right? But I don't think blowing up Teslas or fucking doing all this is making you look sane. The Europeans are looking at this going, wow, Trump's nuts, but the opposition. Where's somebody like Obama? Where's the calm person talking? Kamala Harris. I don't care who voted for her, but she was like that thing about joy and hope, and it's like, listen, you are going to be running the largest military-industrial complex country in the world. You have got people like Putin, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of the whole Trump thing, but you don't need hope and joy, Kamala. You need to basically be saying to Putin, you need to wind your fucking neck in and get the fuck out of Ukraine before this comes World War III. And if you don't, I'm sorry to say this, but the Russian people are going to suffer. You need to know that.
Yeah.
And how do you make the Russian people suffer? Well, I'll tell you what's going to make the Russian people suffer when. And I hate this because I know I'm on a podcast. I know it's getting recorded, and I know it gets spicy because a lot of Americans and the Trump side of things are starting to see that Zelensky maybe isn't the most clean cut person ever. Oh, sorry, was that not like Richard Nixon that the Republicans defended? A crook? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's funny, depending on the political sphere, depending on who's on the left or the right, they'll justify things that they've done on their side that Zelensky's done. Now, is Ukraine a corrupt country? I'm a European. Yes, Ukraine is a corrupt country. I
I've
can
heard.
tell you that before this war even happened. I could tell you that there was deals with uranium before the Ukraine war. This was in the 80s and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it was in the Soviet Union that was corrupt. You know, there's things like Holodomor where the Soviet Union basically starved people. You hear Jordan Peterson say, like they were putting up signs saying stuff like, um, remember it's immoral to eat your own children or to eat children or something like that. Like the Soviet Union was basically starving them and they were eating their own people. So I feel it for the Ukrainian people. They've had a fucking hard history. I am not doubting that. But at the same time, in 1991, Ukraine became independent from the Soviet Union. Are people going to tell me that from 1991 Ukraine's been squeaky clean? Has it? Fuck. Ukraine has been a very corrupt country and a very dodgy country. In fact, before 2014, when Russia did its initial invasion, 'cause that's when it happened, 2014. It's been going on for like 11 years now. It's
Yeah.
only that the rest of the world's really noticed when they did the full invasion in 2022. But from 1991 to 2013, let's say, right, as a European, you would never consider going to Ukraine. You would never, ever go there. Why?
Really.
Because it's dangerous as shit. The Russian mafia that we talk about, like not just oligarchs, but just the actual Russian mafia, there is one. They had like sub brands, like the Ukrainian Russian mafia, if you know what I mean, because
Mhm.
they all speak a similar language. So it was dodgy going to Ukraine. In fact, have you ever heard of the horror movie Hostel, where the rich
Yes. Yes.
uh,
The
pay?
horror.
Right. Ukraine, at some point in its history, had something like that going on. That's what it was based from. So I'm not blaming Zelensky. People can call him a crook or whatever, but I think to look at the whole of Ukrainian's history, it's not squeaky clean. It's not. It's one of the reasons why I don't put it as my profile pic. But do I think Russia's wrong? Yes, I can agree that both can be wrong at the same time. I'm
Yeah,
not a hypocrite. I don't think Russia should be going in and shooting missiles into cities. I don't think that's right.
no,
And at the same time, I would prefer it if Kiev didn't hit Moscow, but that makes sense. If Russia invades Scotland, not even UK, but just Scotland, and somebody says, "Do you want to hit Russia?" I'm going to go, "Yeah, fuck yeah." You know what I mean? Like, this is my country. If I die defending it, I'm happy. So I can understand why Ukraine would be attacking Russia, and I can understand it 100%. I feel it for them. But we need to be absolutely realistic here. A lot of the money that Ukraine's been given, I don't know if it's been to the best use. But another thing that pissed me off about Trump voters was, oh, you Europeans didn't give as much as we did. First of all,
NATO.
I'm skeptical about that. Second of all, who the fuck asked America to send that amount of money in the first place? If the Europeans weren't sending that amount of money, why did America feel the need to do that? Why did Joe Biden go, oh, I'm going to send them this? If it's so out of ballpark, it wasn't Europe going, America, you must do that. America voluntarily gave that money. I love it how there's always a scapegoat.
It
You
wasn't
know,
the Budapest Memorandum where we when Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons, we agreed to help them out. You
yes, yes, that happened as well. But then that Budapest memorandum happened, right? But that doesn't change the fact that Ukraine's a corrupt country.
yeah, yeah.
So a lot of the US people wouldn't want to touch it, which is why Hunter Biden's involvement in that whole Ukraine thing was so fucked up.
Yeah.
The US didn't want to go into that zone, that area, even though they signed that memorandum. Why? Because you do not want to be caught in that place. Like in Western Europe, France, Germany, and all that, you will hear things about Eastern Europe. You will hear horror stories from Ukraine. I've
I've
even heard things about the Czech Republic, Kosovo, Serbia. I've heard crazy shit. It's not just Russia. They have got problems. The word Slav, which is derogatory, that's where the word slave comes from. These people were slaves. The Ottoman Empire, which was a Muslim empire, and they were defeated in World War I.
that was Turkey,
Right?
right?
Yeah, that was Turkey. Um, Basically, they took on it was called galley slavery, where they enslaved white people and made them row these boats, but they were whipping them. It was horrible conditions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people go, oh, but it was white people and they were just rowing boats. It's not the same as the transatlantic slave trade. It's like, if you're a fucking slave, you're a slave. It shouldn't really matter how bad the treatment was. You're a slave no matter
Yeah,
what. There isn't like a good slavery. It's just like you're a slave and you're treated badly no matter what. I actually had a Muslim friend once that said to me, slavery under Islam isn't as bad," and I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean by that, bro? Slavery's slavery." He says, "Yeah, but we treat them like servants and not slaves." I'm like, "That doesn't really fucking matter. They're still
You
a
know what
human. They're
though?
not
So
property."
I
You know what I'm saying?
actually had a thought because we have such issues with immigration here. Everybody wants to come in and they're coming in illegal. And I thought like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not pro slavery, but what about bringing back something like what was it?
Indentured servitude.
Yes, yes, where you say, okay, you come here, but you work on this farm for 5 years to earn your citizenship.
That used to be quite a decent way to go about it. In fact, there's been some ideas and proposals here regarding people joining the military and serving in the military, and then you're like, "Well, you fought for this country, so you
Earning
deserve to be
your
in it."
citizenship. Yeah.
So yeah, I get that. Um, the problem is there was something you said just a couple of minutes ago about everyone wants to come here.
Yeah.
The illegal immigration doesn't match up to legal immigration. There's a lot of Americans leaving America, and there's not like, for example, people that I know that went to America here. I know one person in Scotland in my whole life that's ever went and stayed in America, and I've spoke to him since he moved to America. His wife lives in America. He basically met her online, and he's a game developer, so he moved to America.
Uh-huh.
And he saved up a shit ton of money while in Britain. Now in Britain, our currency, its value trumps the dollar, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So for like let's say £1 here is like $2, something like that in America. So If you, well, not quite. If you go to America with £1 million, it's actually like $1.2 million.
Mm.
There's like you get a little bit more for what you get. And that's that again, probably Trump supporters say, no, that's more proof that the world's conning us, but that's not exactly the case. It's just what happens when you run the most successful empire for decades and decades, and then it's the British Empire is gone, and we have very little power and control and influence in the world.
Mm.
But we have Commonwealth countries like Jamaica and stuff that we still listen to, and they still treat us like, you know, family. It's weird. We've
Yeah.
got a Commonwealth family, and Trump was talking about joining that Commonwealth family, and we were like, nah. You have to understand, the Commonwealth is for people that stayed in the empire and left democratically, or we gave them it back.
Okay.
Because the difference is that, see, the United States, we can still view that with a lot of compassion for what Americans went through. The 13 colonies were getting taxed so much as well that the people were eating fucking rats to survive. Am I going to be against the United States for that? Nah.
Yeah.
It makes sense. If I was you, I would have done the same. But um, places like the Caribbean and places like Canada or Australia, they didn't fight us. They were very proud to be part of the empire. And when they got their independence, it wasn't in bad terms. That's what the Commonwealth is. The Commonwealth is it's a friendship almost between countries. It's like allies without controlling them.
Uh-huh.
You know, so British Empire does not exist, but we still have allies, and we don't need to force them to be allies. They just are, and that's a bond that's so much harder to break than it is when you control people. That's why I said to a lot of Trump supporters, don't annex Canada, befriend Canada. Don't annex Greenland, befriend Greenland. They'll want an alliance with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Part of the reason why the British Empire was so successful was with Australia and Canada, is that the people were they assimilated into the empire. I don't think people from Canada can ever assimilate to the United States. I don't think Canadians want to. I don't think
Shouldn't happen.
Canadians want to be a part of it. So see, when you force them, yeah, there's going to be a lot of resistance. Australia was different. Canada was different because a lot of these people were our descendants to begin with, whereas people in Jamaica and that weren't. A lot of them were slaves, and that's why it's a little bit different. But we also have a good relationship with them. It's weird. The British Empire brought a lot of good as well as it brought some bad. And as a modern British person, see, people say, "Oh, but you're benefiting from the British Empire still," and I'm like, my family was poor as fuck. My family was like, we literally, my family's really interesting. My grands, my great grandmother and stuff like that, they've all got names that if you trace back, it's literally as early as Scotland can go.
Okay.
Basically, family gets traced back to blacksmiths on my mum's side, blacksmiths from all the clans. And I'm going to talk about this. It's going to be controversial, so this will be good for the last segment, I think.
Yeah.
But you guys have what we call the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
Well, the clan idea comes from Scotland.
Really?
Clans come from Scotland.
Okay.
Clan means family. So the MacDonald clan is the MacDonald family, and the Fraser clan is the Fraser family, and so on and so forth. These are all clans. And when the clans used to fight, I remember there was a story when I was younger. Now, I think I've tried to fact check it, and I couldn't find anything on it, but I would trust what people say here than I would in something on the internet, but it might not have been updated yet,
Mm.
because not everything that has happened is on the internet. But it was said when I was younger, and in the history lessons when I was in school, they taught us that if your clan, your family was in trouble, they used to burn a cross to alert everyone nearby that they were
Really?
under attack. And it really, really, yeah. And if you didn't turn up to the calling of the cross burning, you were ostracized from the family. Sorry, you were kicked out the family
I
because you
did not.
didn't turn up. Now, interestingly enough, hundreds of years later, America has the Ku Klux Klan, who also burn crosses, but for totally different reasons.
Yeah.
None of the families in Scotland and none of the clans were racist, by the way.
How you kind of
They
trace that
they
back. I didn't know
they
that.
didn't. They didn't know there wasn't any black people in Scotland. There was no racism involved with the clan system here. It was nothing like that. It was literally families that used to fight each other, for land or control or power. Um, but sometimes these families would absorb into other families. Like, if two people get married, they've got two different surnames. What happens? The wife becomes the same second name as the husband,
Yes.
and that's what happens. So they amalgamate over time. That's why, like we had different groups of people. Because Scotland's full of Celtic people, so you've got the Picts, for example. They were the ones that fought the Romans.
Mhm.
But there's also the Gauls, right? And so the Picts were absorbed by the Gauls. That's where you get Gaelic from. So Gaelic's the language here,
Okay.
and also in Ireland, it's Celtic. So a lot of these people that we used to have in Scotland, they all amalgamated into one because over time, people will be mixed. It's just what happens. But interestingly enough, it's something that got missed by the South. In the 13 colonies, you guys have something that we call sectarianism. A little thing called sectarianism, religious sectarianism. So people from Ireland typically don't like English people. Even today, there's a
I
lot,
heard this.
right? But in the 13 colonies, there was Irish people and English people and Scottish people. And these same divides that we have in Britain today were alive and well in the 13 colonies. That's why the Southern Confederate flag looks like a Scottish flag, but with different colours. If you put a Scottish flag and a Confederate flag together, and you look up the Confederate leaders' names, they're Scottish names.
Really?
There's a huge influence from Scotland on the South of America. Your fried chicken in the South, look up who did that first, who brought it. It was Scotland. You Google it, you just type in who brought fried chicken to the South of America. Scotland. English people used to boil their chicken. We fried it. That's why we have deep fried Mars bars, which is chocolate bars. We have deep fried fucking everything. Pizzas. We're like insane for deep frying stuff. So yeah, it was a big part of American South's culture was Scottish, and that's also why you see some mascots in schools in the South. I've seen they have like a tartan sort of mascot or Loch Ness monster. I've even seen a school in California that had like a tartan uniform. I was like, what the fuck? Silicon Valley with tartan? What? And another thing is, Americans and a lot of people actually they look at tartan as like, oh, tartan's different styles. Every single color and style of tartan represents a different family, a different clan.
Okay.
So when you look at one and there's one that's different from it, maybe one's yellow, one's red, one's blue. These are all different families you're looking at. You're not just looking at it from a style, aesthetic difference. These are all bloods, different types of groups, different families. At one point in Scotland's history, you had to wear a certain type if you came from a certain family. That's how they identified you as that family.
Yeah.
So it's a big part of that. And you'll see people like the only time we wear kilts today in Scotland is at weddings. You might see the occasional guy walking around the
Do you
city in
wear
a
a kilt?
kilt. But when I go to weddings, my wedding, I'll go in a kilt, but I don't walk
Like
about with a
dress up.
kilt all the time.
So it's like dressing up.
It's more traditional for celebrations. It wouldn't really work in today's world. I mean, going up an escalator or an elevator, getting
Yeah.
your kilt caught would be embarrassing, especially since in Scotland it's a tradition that you don't wear anything under your kilt. You don't wear
Oh
any
yeah.
underwear. You get no boxers. No. It's really awkward because when I say pants, Americans think that I'm talking about trousers or
Yeah.
bottoms, but I'm actually talking about underwear. So there's some language differences.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, one of the things that I was going to mention earlier on,
In
I've got
America, we
total
call that free balling.
yeah, free balling.
Yeah.
We also call that going commando,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
yeah,
quite
we call
funny.
it that too.
So we go commando. But one of the things that I was going to say earlier on, I think we got cut off by the time of the recording was one thing that that Europe does better than America. Um, you guys, when you drive, you guys do automatic.
We're talking about stick shifts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love stick shifts. No one knows how to drive them. I love it. It's my favorite.
In Europe, most people drive manual.
Really?
Everyone drives manual. Only a small percentage of people go automatic like they do in America. Um,
I didn't realize
the
they
thing is,
still made that many manual vehicles.
yeah, and you know what? The manual vehicles are cheaper
Yeah, I
most
noticed
of
that.
the
That's
time.
why I buy them. That's why I like them.
In the UK, if you get a driving license for manual cars, you can also drive automatic. But
Okay.
if you get an automatic driving license, you can only drive automatics.
No shit.
So
And here with a license, you can just drive whichever. It doesn't matter.
aye, so that incentivizes people to get the manual. And there's also this thing, we've also got this sort of fear in Europe of modernizing too quickly. Some countries in the EU, like the EU is really bad for this. The EU wants to modernize very quickly.
Yes.
So you seen that blackout in Spain?
What's that?
Did you see the blackout in Spain and
No, I
Portugal?
don't think so.
So in Spain and Portugal, just a couple of days ago, they had a
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
blackout
The
that lasted
electric
12
blackout.
hours.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, that was modernization too quickly. They were using a lot of solar, like 60 to 90% solar. So that means if there's any fluctuations in the weather, all of a sudden they've lost it.
Yeah,
So
their power grid totally failed. Yeah, I saw that.
because they're not doing a 50-50 renewable and fossil fuels, they're doing like higher ends and it's modernizing too quickly. You need to balance it out a bit, test the waters, but they're modernizing too quickly. But when it comes to driving, we don't want to move to automatic in case there's some sort of electrical failure or maybe a fucking using a trade war
Yeah.
where so that's why we keep to manuals. That's why 1990s cars are so expensive. See cars with less computers in them and more manual.
Yeah, I
These
would rather
old
have that. I
cars,
don't want all that computer shit in my car, dude.
they are so expensive in Europe because they're so sought after.
Yeah, it's
Old
ridiculous, man.
1980s
Like,
Toyotas and stuff.
I don't even
Like,
care if I have power windows. Like, I don't give a shit.
well, look at that. The Taliban use fucking Toyotas with a fucking 50 cal machine gun on the test bed, the
You
back
see
of it.
those videos of them, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, I want that too. If I can survive Afghanistan in a war, I want that fucking
Oh, I
car.
thought you meant
I
you
don't
wanted a Toyota with a 50 cal.
well, well that too. But it's like if that can survive deserts, wars, I want that car. I don't want the Tesla that in Spain. Oh, I can't use my Tesla anymore because the power's went out. Fuck off. I don't want that. I want a car that's actually reliable. I want something that's going to get me from A to B.
Yeah.
And in Europe, it's insane. Like even Scotland's worse than the United Kingdom, by the way. Our government in Scotland is so green and pro renewables. It's insane. Like we've got a huge oil reserve and we're not using it, and we're instead importing oil, which just costs the
Well,
taxpayers more.
you
And it's
said
like,
you don't refine it though, right?
yeah, well, we did until yesterday, when the last one closed. We
Okay.
went so green that we've got tons of oil. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that around Americans in case they invade me, but we've got so much fucking oil that we compete with Saudi Arabia in terms of the oil supply.
Uh-huh.
In fact, it's worth more than £1 trillion,
Wow. That's a
which
lot,
is
yeah.
even more in America. But we can't use it because the government's like, no, 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 no. And we've got these things, these stupid, what's it called? Like these low emission zones, LES
Yeah,
zones,
yeah,
that's what
emission
they're called.
standards and whatnot, yeah.
And it's ridiculous because see if you want to get like a taxi to the city centre, I mean you've got to get an electric taxi now. Like there's got to be an electric car. And
Really.
there's no charging ports because it hasn't modernised in the city. So they're pushing renewables, but they don't actually have reliable solutions. These taxi drivers don't there's only like one street that has charging ports in Glasgow. So all these taxis are literally fighting over chargers
Oh,
and
that's
they don't have another choice.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
you
it's
need
like
the chargers if you're
if
gonna have a fleet of electric taxis.
exactly. It's like, see if you want to go renewable, that's fine, but at least prepare for it. It's like,
Yeah.
geez, it's like there's no problem with going renewables. I mean, we have an island in Orkney. Sorry, what? We've got an island in Scotland called Orkney, right? And it has so much power, we don't know what to do with it. It is entirely powered by renewables, and it has an excess of energy. We don't know what to do with it.
Huh. No shit.
So, imagine having that as a problem, right?
Yeah,
We
that's
don't know
not a
what
bad
to do
problem
with
to
it.
have.
But the problem is it's distribution. Once you've made that electricity, try and put that in a battery and then move it. It's really difficult to make batteries for this. It's really strange to me because it should be easy, but
And I
they have
guess
problems
making batteries
distributing
is
it.
bad for the environment, and mining for lithium is bad for the environment.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about is like a capacitor.
Okay.
So a capacitor is like, so it takes in the excess electricity from this, and then you can move the capacitor. But as you like, because it's not a battery, it's a capacitor. It's like, but different. You have a lot of loss in that. So by the time you have got the capacitor transported to the mainland and not the island, it's lost like half of its energy.
Okay.
So the whole of Orkney, it's got ships, it's got boats, it's got planes, all powered by renewable energy on the island because they have nothing else to do with it. It's pretty cool. Um, But yeah, there's and also Project Natick, something that Americans ironically haven't heard of, but it's a Microsoft product. It's an American company, but in Orkney, they're using these submarine data centers and they're putting them in Scotland because we've got excess energy, obviously, because we've got this island that's just, wasting electricity, it doesn't know what to do with it.
Uh-huh.
So Microsoft has made an undersea data center in Scotland
Oh wow.
and repower it. And so the sea cools down the data center and we also give it excess
The
power
water
when it
cooled
needs it.
computer.
Yeah, our sea cools down Microsoft's undersea data center.
Hmm.
It's insane, man. Like,
We got about
there's
5 minutes left, man. Anything you want to get in before we finish up?
Yeah, just a wee note to well, I imagine the majority will be American viewers.
Probably,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I understand that right now it feels like it's a very us versus them thing, and it does feel like that in Scotland sometimes, and it feels like that in other countries. But please understand that when it comes to Thanksgiving dinners or walking down the street and saying hello to your neighbour, or when you go into workplace, these people might vote differently to you, but they are just as American and they deserve the same respect and rights as you do.
Yeah.
Um, I am. I've got a mix of different opinions. Some might say I'm libertarian. Some might say I'm really, really nationalist. It just depends on what the topic is, to be honest. But in my opinion, I'm very pro free speech. If I see a communist or a socialist say something I dislike, I will never silence them. They have a right to
They're
say it.
right.
It could hurt my little precious feelings, but I need to accept that. So if you are sitting here right now and you have voted for Trump and you think it's okay to silence people because they disagree with what you've got to say or they have a different opinion, you need to start thinking about why your founding fathers did what they did in the first place and why in the Constitution it mentions so much about tyrannical governments.
Yeah.
It's the one thing you guys need to be fearing the most,
Yeah, it's
regardless if
scary.
it's foreign or domestic. Now, see if it was like, say, Bernie Sanders and he wanted to be like fucking Stalin 2.0, I'd be sitting here right now going, remember people who voted Bernie? The Republicans are people too.
Yeah.
I'm non-partisan when it comes to constitutional rights. Who the fuck are we to be partisan to that? That applies to everybody. You know what I mean? And
It
as a Scots
applies to
guy,
everyone. And you know,
uh, uh,
they're even suing news organizations now. And you know, like 60 Minutes, there's a big thing where they're suing 60 Minutes because they said something Trump doesn't like, and it's just like, where does this end, dude?
oh shit.
Like, I don't like if I don't like what you have to say, I still would defend your right to say that. Even
Yeah,
people that I don't like, uh,
yeah,
or I don't care for their politics, like I don't want to take their rights away. I don't want to ship them to El Salvador.
nope.
I think we're all supposed to be have equal rights here, and it's just crazy people that are getting shipped out without due process, and it's just it's really scary for a lot of us to see how this is happening, and almost even scarier is that there are a lot of people who seem to like it.
Mm.
And I've seen Trump supporters say, "Well, we should just start sending people that disagree with Trump to El Salvador. We should just start
At the
sending
same time,
Democrats."
at the same time, any Democrat that's like talking about cancel culture and try to cancel somebody for what they say, I disagree with that too. Listen, to have like positive, healthy conversations and relationships, you need to talk. You
Yeah,
can't
absolutely.
cancel people. That's why you're in this situation.
All
You just need to
assuming
talk.
things too, way too much.
Aye, and just have a normal, casual conversation. You're both American. You might disagree, but grow up. How many people have died for America to be where it is? It's a bit
Yeah,
of a slap in the face to not even Native Americans, if you want to go that way. Doesn't matter who. A lot of people have died to get to this point. Have a chat of trying to avoid conflict.
how hard is
But
it to talk?
aye, exactly.
It's
So,
really not, and it's like that's the thing, man. Is when I do talk to people on the other side of the spectrum, I realize we've got more in common than what divides us.
yeah,
The
just with like
thing that we're
less
so
than a
quick to
minute.
label each other.
Yeah, just with less than a minute left, man. All I wanted to say was, um, that if you look up the year that A Wealth of Nations was released by Adam Smith, a Scotsman, you'll find that it has a lot in relation to when America became independent. Well,
Mhm.
1776, that's the year it was released, and a lot of founding fathers like them. Alexander Graham Bell made the Bell Telephone Company, which became AT&T. made Bell Labs, and that made Linux in the C language. So a lot of what we see today, technology-wise, in America, wouldn't be possible without Scottish inventors and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah.
look into it. There's a lot to it.
Well, yeah, this has definitely been insightful, dude. It's about to cut us off. But
Yeah, no.
yeah, dude, I'll talk to you more on DM and we'll see what we can
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about maybe for next time about, introducing some specific topics and stuff like that. But dude, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out.